Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today is Thursday, August 4th, 2022, and this is a land use meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Manatee County. It is an absolutely beautiful day today in Manatee County, and we're going to start the day the way we always do. We're going to start by honoring God and by honoring our great nation. Today we have Pastor Dirk Rogers from Roser Memorial Church, who will deliver the invocation. Not relevant at all, but my grandmother is the longest living member and serving member of Roser Church. Mr. Rogers? Mr. Rogers. Interesting. And after which, Commissioner Bellamy, our resident Army veteran, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this time, if you're able, please stand.
Shall we pray together? Dear Heavenly Father, we do ask your blessing upon our conversations today. We ask your blessing first among those who will participate in those conversations. We recognize that everyone here that is engaged in these civil discussions have personal lives with their own struggles, health struggles, family struggles, financial struggles, and yet here we are assembled to set those aside for a moment and reflect upon what your will is for us as a community. Father, we pray for each individual participating in the conversations, especially the civil servants here who are engaged in the difficult business of listening to a diverse population, all the views represented, and then exhibiting the finest example of democracy in our land, to listen, to collaborate, to discuss, and make a decision that is in the best interest of all of us. Father, we pray for wisdom, your Spirit to walk through those and work through those conversations so that we honor the will of the majority without ignoring or discounting or demeaning the will of the minority. Father, help us to discuss and talk in a way that honors you through our civility one to another. And we trust the outcome to you as you work among your people. In the name of Christ Jesus we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic from which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your service. We will start today with updates to the agenda, which will be announced by Mrs. Courtney DePaul, Director of Development Services. Mrs. DePaul.
Good morning. So the updates that were posted on August 4th, 2022 was under advertised public hearings, presentations upon request. Item number 3, PA 21-01, Ordinance 22-27, SR 64 North Property, Large-Scale Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, PLN 2103-0022, under legislative led by Charlie Andrews. Public comments were attached. Then again today, which is not listed on your update, we had 2 more public comments that were entered, one for the SR 64 North property that I just mentioned, and one additional one for the appeal. That is item number, hold on one second. Item number 12, which is Resolution R-22-006 and R-22-005, which is an appeal of administrative determination AD 21-31. And so again, one additional public comment was included. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DePaul. We're going to go right to citizen comment on future agenda items. Is there anyone who would like to come forward to speak on a future agenda item? I don't have any cards, but if there's anyone in the audience who would like to come forward to speak on an item that may appear before this board at a future meeting, please come forward now. All right, seeing no one, we will check the phone lines to see if anyone has called in. Has anyone called in to speak on future agenda items? No one has called in. We're going to close public comment. We're going to start working our way through this agenda. Mrs. DePaul, would you please introduce the first agenda item under advertised public hearings?
Agenda item number 1, PA PA-22-04, Ordinance 22-30, Northeast Quadrant Map Amendment, PLN 2202-0105, Legislative, and we've got Charlie Andrews presenting, Principal Planner. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Quick note, Commissioner Satcher is participating in this meeting via Zoom, so he is here and he will be voting on items as we go. Commissioners, this is... First of all, can Commissioner Satcher acknowledge that he is on the line?
I am on the line, Chair. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner.
Oh, yes, Mr. Chair.
Sarah, yeah.
When we get to 1 and 2, the presentation upon request, the two related comes to plan amendments, one's a map and text amendment. We can open the public hearings together, or both separate.
I just assume hold them together. Yeah,
Yeah, we
I would just assume hold them together. If you'll read number 2 as well.
Okay, number 2 as well, PA-22-05, Ordinance 22-40, which is the Northeast Quadrant Text Amendment, PLN 2203-0098. It's a legislative item. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, it's a presentation upon request. Commissioner Whitmore, you're on the board.
The new system here. I don't need a presentation at all, but I would like the staff to say something brief so the public knows what we're voting on, because we are decreasing the units in the project.
Commissioners, any objections? All right, Charlie?
Morning. Morning.
We're not the most
Hey,
technically
close to
capable
it.
bunch, are we?
Oh, good morning.
There you are, sir.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, great.
Sure.
Good morning, Commissioners. Charles Andrews, Principal Planner here, Development Services. As a background here, Commissioner Whitmore, this is for a map and a text amendment to the Northeast Quadrant. This is being adjusted here to remove 202 acres from the Northeast Quadrant, which is north of State Road 64. The property, like I said, is north of State Road 64, Waterline Dam Road in that general vicinity. The text amendment, like I said, this would be adjusting the total number of residential entitlements by 3%, which would equate to 435 dwelling units for a total of 9,665 single-family detached units and 2,900 single-family attached dwelling units. And this was voted for transmittal by the board to the state on May 19th. And that's the background. If there's anything else you'd like.
Thank you, because I was talking to media just a little while ago, and that's another example where it's not like we prove everything. I mean, actually, the development is coming down and downsizing some, so I just think that it needs to be stated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Servia.
No, actually, never mind, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, no commissioners on the board. We'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on items 1 or 2? All right, seeing no one, we'll go to the phone. Has anyone called in to speak on items 1 or 2? No, no callers. We're going to close public comment, and still no commissioners on the board. I'll entertain motions. We're going to do 1 and 2
For one?
together.
Oh, we're going to do them together. I think we have
You
to do
want
them
separate
separate.
motions?
Yeah,
Okay.
separate motions.
That's what I thought.
Do separate motions, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to approve the recommended motion on item number 1. And do I have to read the title?
No.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion by Commissioner Whitmore and a second by Commissioner Cruz. We've held public comment. No one's on the board. We'll hold the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Madam Clerk, item number 1 passes unanimously. We're entertaining motions on item number 2.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommended motion on item number 2.
A motion by Commissioner Whitmore to approve and a second by Commissioner Cruz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Madam Clerk, item number 2
Excuse me, did Mr.
passes unanimously.
Satcher-
Commissioner Satcher, they didn't hear your vote on item number 2, sir.
Or 1.
I'm an aye.
Or 1. Did you vote on 1 as well?
I did vote on both.
And you were an aye on both? I heard you correctly?
Yeah, and probably what I'll do if I'm not on the board, I'm probably going to vote with everyone today. Just to
We
keep
want to
it-
hear you. We want to hear you anyway, though. We appreciate your support, sir. But we're going to want to hear your
Say
your
that
voice. We enjoy hearing you. Okay,
All
we're
right.
going to close. We're going to close items 1 and 2. And Mrs. DePaul, please read item number 3 into the record.
Item number 3, under presentations upon request, PA-21-01, Ordinance 22-27, SR 64 North Property, Large-Scale Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, PLN 2103-0022, under legislative.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Andrews is here to present for this as well. Commissioners, is anyone requesting a presentation on item 3? Okay, so no presentation is requested. Good job, Mr. Andrews. We'll open this up to... You want him to read what it's about? Okay. Oh, that's all right. Sir?
Good morning, Commissioners. Charles Andrews, Principal Planner, Development Services, and to read this item into the record. So this is for the adoption of a privately initiated map amendment to Element 2, Future Land Use Map Amendment of the Comprehensive Plan for a 310.25 acre property from the Res 1, Residential 1, 108.25 acres, and MUCR, which is Mixed Use Community Residential at 3 dwelling units per acre, 202 acres, future land use categories to the UF3, Urban Fringe, 3 dwelling units per acre, future land use category for a total of 310.25 acres. Said property being located north of State Road 64 East, south and west of Waterline Dam Road, and east of 172nd Street, commonly known as 18121 State Road 64 East in Bradenton.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cruz, you're on the board.
Yeah, this one obviously took a lot longer to discuss last time. This is as a presentation upon request because it's a transmittal, but let's remember what that discussion was last time. It was a contentious discussion based upon granting over 200 additional units for absolutely no reason to a piece of land on a watershed immediately next to our lake. And there was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of hesitation from this board. And I thought, because I mean, just to let everyone know, I voted against it. I honestly thought there was going to be 3 other people voting against this. But everybody got kind of, for lack of a better term, conned into what we always do relative to these transmittals. Let's admit what these transmittals are. Maybe some people up here don't know what they are. Maybe people in the public don't know what they are. We're supposed to vote on these and discuss these the first time they come up. And we're being requested to change the text of our comp plan to allow for things it doesn't presently allow for. Once we vote on it, that's effectively our approval. Then we have to send it to the state. Everyone wants to pretend that the state's going to fully diligence this, that the state's going to make an intelligent decision about these text amendments and then come back to us with their own staff report. That's not what the state does. The state is literally looking at the text saying, is this legal and is this statutorily allowable? That's all they look at. They don't come down here and do a neighborhood meeting. They don't come down here and look for gopher tortoises. They don't come down here and assess whether it's compatible. They don't care. They're literally saying, does the text that we approved meet the law? And then they come back to us every single time and say, yes, it does. Not because it does. It's very flexible, broad in terms of what the law allows us to do. So the state doesn't overstep its boundaries. Every time these come back and they say there's no issue, and then we're supposed to basically just reaffirm the approval we made. But when this came up, that's not how this board acted. This board was leaning towards, the way I felt it, leaning towards a denial. But then at the 11th hour, someone came up to our old podium over there and said, let's remember, board, this is just a transmittal. This is not an approval. This is just sending it up to where you have another opportunity to discuss this once the state opines on it. That was almost word for word what we were told. And that swayed a bunch of people from saying, this probably isn't a good idea to give away over 200 free units for absolutely nothing in our watershed, next to our lake, next to larger single-family homes. Because let's remember, we just had this discussion with the Astoria project where we granted them $1.2 million for affordable housing. And I said, if we had in lieu payments, we would have had a fund to do this, and we could be doing a lot more of it. Even at $25,000 a unit, which is a fraction of the profit from these units, there's over 200 units. That would be over $5.5 million into an affordable housing trust fund. And most developers would happily pay that or provide the affordable housing. It allows for them to get the density while we get the money to put in affordable housing. Here we get the worst of both worlds. We get the additional density on our watershed next to our lake that the citizens don't want, and we don't get anything to put towards the affordable housing or any other benefit to the community whatsoever. This board was leaning towards denial previously, and the only reason I believe there was not 4 votes for that last time this came up was solely because everyone up here was somehow convinced that a transmittal is not an approval, yet now we're showing up here with a presentation upon request with no discussion or dialogue, or as far as I can tell, anyone on the board to even have this discussion, because it's just going to pass through on presumably a 7-0 vote or a 6-1 vote, because there's no way I'm voting for this thing because I disagree with it the first time. And you're just proving the point. Transmittals are not a kick the can down the road. We're supposed to approve these things the first time around, and then just get the state to reaffirm what we approved. That's what transmittals are. Whether it's this project or any other project, let's stop pretending they're not. Let's stop pretending the state is giving us some sort of diligence that we missed or our staff missed, that we can come back and have a real discussion after the fact. That's not how we're supposed to be doing things. We're elected to make tough decisions and real decisions and research these decisions and stand behind them. And kicking these down the road and hiding behind the state is not how we as elected officials in this board are supposed to act for the good of this community. I disagree with this the first time. I do not think this is where 200 additional units are supposed to go. I certainly don't think the community is getting any net benefit out of it, because we have not structured any incentives to allow for the community to get net benefits of it. And I just want to remind everyone, a lot of you weren't thrilled with this the first time. You agreed to it solely, and some of you even said, well, if it's just a transmittal, what's the big deal? You said that the first time. Now we've done the transmittal. You knew it was going to happen when it came back. It's this exact moment right here. So just because the state said it was okay, don't forget, a lot of you didn't think it was okay the first time around. So that's my opinion on transmittals as a whole. Let's start acting the way we're supposed to act and not treating them as a cover for us. It's our decision to make. And I don't think a lot of you liked the way this was going the first time around.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Whitmore.
In all due respect, I don't appreciate that you think that we don't know what we're doing. The state has denied projects over the years. You just probably don't realize that, and I'm sure the staff could look that up for you. I'm getting the impression that if they would have built affordable housing, it would have been okay. And I kind of remember you saying that before. So this was a project that's probably been in the books forever. And this was going to be a future school, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Madam Attorney? This was years ago, the Lakewood Ranch was going to put a school here. So that didn't pan out with the school board. So they're going to put housing there. So there was going to be something there anyway, way before you were around, before you lived in this county. And I actually was involved when I wrote the CON for Lakewood Ranch Medical Center in the 80s. This has all been planned. There was going to be a school there. And now, and then you mentioned affordable housing. I think you would be okay if it was affordable housing, which makes no sense. So, I understand where you're come for. You fought this vehemently last time, and I respect how you're going to vote. But don't say we don't know what we're talking about. I spent all weekend looking at this, and I went over it again with staff. I know whatever decision I make, I've done my homework. I just may not agree with how you perceive it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cruz.
I 100% would be okay with it if it was affordable housing, because our comp plan, because our comp plan, and maybe you're not aware of this, and staff can look it up for you. Our comp plan allows for affordable housing density bonuses. We have that written in there. They're just choosing not to utilize a density bonus that's already available to them because they just want it for free without the density bonus. So yes, I would be okay with it because we've already allowed for it. I can't revert back the comp plan and the language already in place. That comp plan will allow for a density bonus for 25% workforce housing, not even affordable. It's 120%. It's barely affordable. So I would allow it because I follow our comp plan and I follow our future land use maps. That's what we're required to do. That's what we're asked to do. And our future land use map says this is R1. Our comp plan says you can get additional density if you put affordable housing on there. I will honor both of them because that is what is written for Manatee County. So don't say I'd only approve it with affordable. Yes, because that's what you are required as an elected official to follow is that comp plan, unless we choose to change that comp plan. And that's what they're requesting us do is to change that comp plan. But they're trying to change it in spite of the density bonuses we're offering in exchange for workforce housing, not with the density bonuses we're proposing. So yes, I agree with your sentiment. I would approve it, but that's because we do in fact allow that.
Thank you, sir. Whitmore and Servia is the board. Commissioner Whitmore.
There was going to be a school here, and that fell through. And it's because Lakewood Ranch moved things around, and it just didn't work. So it's not like this was a virgin piece of land that was always going to stay pristine. It was always going to be built up. And it didn't, and Lakewood Ranch, the numbers didn't work, or, you know, where the location didn't fit maybe with the kids or whatever. So, you know, you know, if it was a pristine land and where they were coming before us today, of course I would think about it differently. But, you know, I know we're not allowed to engineer at the dais. I mean, I don't know who the builder is. I think I know. But would they change it to affordable? It's probably too late. This has been in the hopper for a couple of years now, probably. So anyway, I just look at it. There's always been a right to build on this property. And the school didn't work, which would have been all cement because of parking lots and all that stuff. You know, I mean, you look at it that way. So anyway, that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, I have a question for staff. So is this comp plan amendment, is it?
Mr. Chair, we have to pull this and get evidence on the
Okay,
record right now.
let's
We're
pull it.
debating this too much without allowing the applicant to address things and the staff. We got to open it up like a regular hearing.
So you want me to go ahead and start with a presentation by Charlie? You want me to bring the
Yes.
applicant up? What do you want me to do?
Let him introduce its legislative, and the applicant will do the rest.
I'll put Misty first on the board. We'll let Charlie go ahead and give us a more thorough presentation on the item, because with the amount of debate we're enjoying, I think we should have a more thorough presentation. Mr. Andrews.
Good morning, Commissioners. Charles Andrews, Development Services. So regarding this item here, this is the SR 64 North property, PA 2101, Ordinance 2227. The public hearings, real quick. I have an outline and I have the original information after this, just regarding the public hearings here. Went to Planning Commission April 14th, went to the board for transmittal May 19th. Regarding state agency comments, several agencies had made comments just regarding just general kind of housekeeping things as we go forward with the amendment and going through the development process. Had some, from Florida Department of Economic Opportunity. We had some from Florida Department of Environmental Protection, just regarding compliance with this as it moves forward. Swift Mud had some comments here on regional water supply as well. And then floodplains, flood-prone areas. Those are all general, just informational comments that they had. Let's see here. And then I'm going to go into here.
Excuse me, Charlie.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sure. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Let me go back to that. So one item here, and I'll read this out here, is that regarding that Lake Manatee State Park is adjacent to the site of the proposed future land use map amendment. Any future development must be done in compliance with all applicable environmental regulatory requirements to ensure that there are no adverse impacts to the park. So going forward as they develop it, as the commissioners know, this was also approved with a rezoning with entitlements. So as they go through and develop the site, they have to bring that, any items they have to make sure that they're in compliance with FDEP. And then regarding the site here, as stated, it's 310.25 acres. General location here, north of State Road 64. Here's a street view of the site. It's going from Res 1, which is the school site that Commissioner Whitmore was discussing. It's on the 108.25 acre portion. And the rest of the site is MUCR, which already allows, or currently allows, 3 dwelling units per acre, and that's the 202 portion for the total site of 310 acres. And it's going to U of 3. The portion there, the yellow portion, Res 1, is the school site there at 108, and then the MUCR, which is in the, I guess, the brown color there. And then the proposed future land use to U of 3, that's what the site would look like. The commissioners will notice on the left side there, they've got the little dashed area there. That's the watershed protection manatee area on the eastern portion there. And then the existing zoning is PDR to recognize the recent rezoning approval. Like I said, overlay districts, we have the special treatment, which is the ST, and then the WPM, Lake Manatee Reservoir Watershed Protection. And then the history on the site, Ag Rural, PSP1, U of 3, and then it was originally A. And then 2001, it had that Res 1 portion to it. And then in 2009, it had the Res 1 to acknowledge that school site, and then the MUCR, which is what it currently is right now. Let's see, as the commissioners know, it had a PDR with PSP, preliminary site plan approval, and that was for a maximum of 706 dwelling units, which included single-family detached, single-family semi-detached, or single-family attached, and then a maximum of 17,750 square feet medical office uses. Let's see here, there's the history on that. And then there is the preliminary site plan approval. Yep, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So this is just the surrounding uses, and I guess I'll just wrap that up on that. But I'm here if the commissioners have any questions.
Commissioner Serbia, you had a staff question, I believe.
Okay, yes, thank you, Charlie, for the presentation. So just a couple of questions for the record. So is this consistent with our comprehensive plan? Is this request consistent with our comp plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's located west of the FDAB, and it's within the areas that's already allocated for water and sewer, so yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that review and research has been done by you and the professional planning staff?
And our agency reviewers, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have all the state agency comments been satisfactorily addressed?
They've been acknowledged, and as they go forward, for example, with that comment with FDEP, as long as they'll be in compliance, it's more of an FYI going forward as they develop the site, then yes, they will. They'll have to be in compliance with the state agencies.
Okay. And does our comp plan require the construction of affordable housing in order to change the future land use map?
No, Commissioner. There's a provision in there with the U of 3, which is what this proposal is going to, that addresses. I can give you the policy here if you'd like, and it has an increase. I think it's 12 dwelling units per acre. I can, if you give me 1 second. Okay. So under policy 2.2.1.11.3, there's a discussion here regarding that U of 3 could go up to 12 dwelling units per acre for residential projects that designate a minimum of 25% of the total dwelling units as affordable housing, quote unquote.
And is this an affordable housing project, or we don't know yet?
No, ma'am. With the rezoning, and the applicant can speak to that, I believe they were just selling them at market rate. But I can have the applicant speak to that.
Right, but it's not a requirement, is what
No,
I'm trying to
ma'am.
get at. I just
No,
wanted
it's
to
an
make
incentive.
sure of that.
Under that
Okay.
policy, it's an incentive, yes, ma'am.
And are all the regulations of our watershed protection overlay for that corner of the property, are they going to be applied on that property with future development?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Charlie. Commissioner Whitmore asked a question about it being a site for former school. Can you or the applicant address that? I can provide testimony on this.
Oh, regarding the school, Commissioner Whitmore? I can go.
It was given to us at the last meeting.
Her question was this site previously designated for a school?
It was.
It was.
I'm
So there
positive.
was a land swap, and the applicant can
Right.
speak to that they had swapped it out so then they could develop this property. I believe it was off of SR 70. I think it's in my staff report. that addresses that. So it was a school site at one time, that Res 1 portion.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Whitmore, the floor is yours.
I actually read my agendas, I remember that. So I have kind of weird questions to ask you about exactly kind of what we're talking about now. Previously, the forefathers in the 80s intended for a school to be there. Okay, so a school there would be impervious parking lots, right? And we didn't know, I never recall what grade level it was going to be, if it was a high school or whatever. And that would depend, because if it's high school, a lot more parking because the kids drive. The amount of trips for traffic, especially during school hours. They're going to have fields with lighting and all this stuff. They have to comply with the buffers near our lake. I understand that. And the lights, which we have one of the most strictest lighting ordinances in the area. At least one time we did. Track fields, maybe a swimming pool, but no, they'd make us pay for it, so it probably wouldn't be there. But, so that's a use of a school, right? And that's an
That's correct.
intensity, and, okay. And then if we went to affordable housing, which I found out that it's not required, and I know that, but if it was affordable, we have heights, it could be 9, 12, whatever stories, lighting, and the number of units. So it could be just as many people in the affordable housing units, as well as the market rate houses, I guess, are going to build, which is being presented today, correct? Kinda?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, and then with the school site, with the finer details of the site design, that would be, they follow the state regulations for educational facilities, or SREF. So the county, we have, not too much, it's more regulated at the state regarding the lighting and the buffering and everything, and we work with them closely. But that's
And we
correct.
all know with our schools in Manatee County how rough it is during school hours when everybody in the world's dropping their kids off, and how intense it is. So again, I just want to bring out those two items that we've discussed. So to me, this other project isn't as much of an infringement as the other two. So I just wanted to bring that up to the board's attention.
Thank you, Commissioner. There are no other commissioners on the board for discussion, so next, I believe we will hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ed Vogler, and I represent the applicant. And we have a full presentation today, and we'd be happy to make that, if that's your objective at this point.
What is the will of the board?
I think I'd like to make a narrow comment, if you don't mind. So the comment about transmittal allows two things to happen, really, from that hearing to this hearing. One of those is to hear what the state of Florida has to say, because that is our process and that is our law. The second point is to allow the applicant to reflect upon the comments made by the commissioners. And I think prior to that meeting, I don't think I ever have heard the idea that a map change in an area that's designated for development and one that is reducing the number of units in the regional area, I've never heard that referred to as free money or free density. And so we've prepared a presentation to identify exactly what the positive economic impacts are to our community when you allow 200 additional units inside the boundaries of an existing approved project that is supported by schools and grocery and retail and churches and roadway network. And so I'd like to show that to you if it means anything, because there is a very significant, important economic benefit. But we're very proud of this proposal. It is good planning, and it reduces density in this region by 224 units. What it does, Commissioner, is it allocates that reduced density so that additional homes, about 200, are located north of State Road 64, right? And that's the effect of this amendment. And as the Commissioner points out, this was designated as Res 1 and not changed because it has historically been identified as a school site. So all the surrounding property, we had this debate as well, virtually all of the surrounding property is 3 dwelling units per acre. And so what we're doing is asking you to fill in the hole in the donut that was left by the former school site not needing density. That's what we call good planning. So there was support for that transmittal. I believe there was support for the concept of good planning that I'm describing to you. And I will, subject to your direction, ask Katie Labar to present our PowerPoint, which will conclude with the economic analysis that I will communicate if we get that far. Thank you.
You want to hear the PowerPoint on economic impact?
Law, I don't think we're allowed to take in consideration economic, market, and all that, right?
I don't know what Mr. Boga was referring
Yeah,
to.
okay.
I mean, it's the applicant's time. They
Right.
can present what they want.
Market, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll hear your presentation on economic impact.
Good morning, Commissioners. We do have a presentation prepared if you don't mind sharing that. I am Katie Labar. I'm with Stantec. I'm a certified planner, and I'm happy to be here to present this project to you today. I'm presenting on behalf of Neal Communities of Southwest Florida. Since Charlie did a great job providing the overview, I'm going to go ahead and skip to several of the exhibits that probably look quite familiar to you. The map on the screen shows the existing future land use category, as it's been said. Portion of the site is in the Res 1 future land use category. The balance of the site, approximately 202 acres, is in the mixed use community residential land use category. Proposing to amend to UF3 so that the overall property has a unified land use category. This is an aerial of the property, of the region, from 2009. 2009 is the year that the mixed-use community future land use category was established, and at the leadership of Schrader Manatee Ranch, maps were amended to identify different areas of the county that would, within this broad region, that would have this mixed-use community future land use category, and established nodes of activity, and then a hierarchy of those nodes from rather intensive activity nodes to moderate intensive activity nodes, and the subject site was certainly a part of that. At that time, you'll see that a lot of this property was predominantly agriculture. There wasn't a whole lot of development in the area. We fast forward to 2022, and we see that there has been tremendous growth and development east of Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. All of the northeast quadrant south of State Road 64 is effectively building out, and it's building out predominantly as suburban residential development, not unlike what has been approved on the north side of State Road 64 and what is proposed. And so this land use amendment does effectively reduce the overall density potential within the region by, when you do the math, 211 units region-wide. But it places the units in a location where they are adequately and properly served by utilities, where they will be an important and cohesive part of an existing and approved community. I just want to very quickly flash the site plan to show that the vast majority of the density will be limited and will be located within the southeast quadrant of the overall property, where it's appropriate, where it won't create any negative impacts to adjacent properties. We did talk about this concept of free density, and with that, Ed, do you want to walk through that? Sure. I think that these are compelling facts that we've put together, and I'll have Ed walk through that. Sure.
So this is an existing approved site plan that exists for this property today. And there are 706 units on there. And if we add 200 more, what Katie just testified to is that they would be located largely in the southeast quadrant of that project, meaning that it wouldn't impact any of the perimeter properties or neighbors or anyone else. And so the question is whether you allow that land opportunity to remain fallow, or whether you allow homeowners to enjoy Manatee County in a comprehensive community that is well planned with all of the adjacent amenities that are existent. So let's look briefly at the economic impact. When a project comes forward in Manatee County, it pays impact fees. This project today, as existing planned, $8.9 million in impact fees spread across the various categories. It also pays facility investment fees that fund an enterprise fund for our utility system, which allows us to build transmission lines and additional capacity for sewer and water municipal services. The existing project will contribute about $2.9 million to that effort. And then, of course, a one-year snapshot of real estate taxes or property taxes, $2.6 million, a significant portion of which, when it goes into the general fund, could be allocated to affordable housing subsidy, certainly so. So, in other words, if your objective is to obtain additional funds to fund affordable housing subsidy, we've just described that. Now, as it relates, so the existing project has a $14.5 million direct economic impact, right there. But then, if you add 224 units inside the perimeter of the project, you will benefit Manatee County citizens by $2.9 million additional dollars for impact fees. The facility investment fees are just over an additional $1 million. And the snapshot one-year property taxes, $781,000. So we submit to you, in the context of comprehensive planning, that when you look at your maps and you say, where should we put the density? First of all, the northeast quadrant, we're reducing the density by 211 units. So we argue that you are making the proper decision to put the density inside the boundaries of an existing approved project. And that makes economic sense for the citizens of Manatee County. And rather than the money sitting in the tax money, sitting in the general fund, you could allocate that in a way that you want. You could build roads. You could take the transportation impact fees and make priorities that this board makes in your capital improvement program. There is no such thing as free density. Density should be planned where it is proper and supported by infrastructure. And it concerns me a lot for areas that haven't been under growth pressure in our community, that were planned in 1989 for Res 1. And those areas, when growth comes to them, and the landowners who own those properties, when those landowners come forward and ask you to increase their density to Res 3, will you say to them, no, you have to pay? So finally, the family, their land has come, they've owned for years, their land comes into the path of development, but now we have to pay. This isn't the way planning is done. I'll say to you again, which I've said at this podium several times, we should relook at all the maps since 1989. We should look at where we want the growth to be in our community. We should evaluate whether Res 1 or UF3 is proper in certain areas where growth has happened. And so the final comment would be, Mr. Neal and I stood here and, where is he? Volunteered our time to serve on an affordable housing advisory committee with you. In the sunshine, in the public, I haven't heard a word about that. Affordable housing is a critical element of the public duties that you have. And we want to be part of that conversation too. But to simply interject it into what would normally otherwise be a routine, well-planned understanding about Res 1 to Res 3, or UF3, isn't really, in our view, the proper measure. So nevertheless, in closing, Mr. Chairman, thank you for letting us make the presentation. It's important at the adoption hearing, following the transmittal hearing, that we're able to respond to state comments and we're able to respond to board comments at the transmittal, and we appreciate that opportunity of having done that today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vogler. There are no commissioners on the board at this time, so I'll move forward with public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on this specific agenda item? I do not have any cards filled out. So, sir, please state your first, your last name, your county of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Good morning. For the record, Glenn Gibolina, Manatee County, 711 28th Street East. So, George, you hit a home run. You know exactly what you're talking about. The transmittal letter, that's nothing but a rubber stamp from the state. The process is flawed. The way we go about it is flawed. There's no public hearing. There's no workshops. Not precious land. Carol, every inch of real estate is precious to us. You know, I heard Pat say earlier, you want to be on Ahab. Well, I didn't see his application for that seat. Actually, he could probably bounce me out real easy. But the way we do business in just rubber stamping these has got to stop. It's funny that if you want to help about workforce housing, then integrate those 200 units into your own project. Set the example. Lead by an example. And I have not seen that. Not 1 square foot of affordable housing from any developer. And they keep taking the entitlements. They say, oh, it's going to benefit the citizens. No, it's not. It's not going to benefit any affordable housing for any citizen. You got 100 different tradesmen in each house that's built, and they can't afford to live there. You got fire, EMS, sheriffs, police that can't afford to live there because these developers refuse to integrate sustainable housing for all the citizens of Manatee County. I get sick and tired when they say, well, they can't afford to live here. Yes, they should be able to afford to live there. You should be proud to have a firefighter, EMS, or a school teacher living in your community, entry-level position, that cannot afford the $300,000 or $400,000 asking price. I'm just sick of it. The extra 200, that's a bonus. You can put a moratorium on them. It's bad policy. It's not the state's responsibility to look out for our best interest. It's your responsibility to look out for our best interest. And that's what we're asking you to deny the transmission letter. Go back to the drawing board. If the man says he wants to be part of the solution, then let him step up to the plate and lead by example. And I haven't seen that in 20 years. So that's my 2 cents for it. I would strongly suggest that this be denied until we get some type of integrated housing for all the citizens of Manatee County, not the ones that just can afford the $300,000 and $400,000 or $500,000 house. It's a bad concept, and I think in the long run you will find that if you integrate these entry-level school teachers, firefighters, car mechanics into those communities, you'll have a better community. These people that just think, oh, we're entitled to be here, and you're not. That type of thinking has been wrong. It's always been wrong. Integrate every housing. We'll make a better, stronger community. Thank you. Good to see you again. Nice digs.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward to speak on this specific item? So, ma'am, please state your first, your last name, your county of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Do we have a visual thing I could put up?
It's right on the.
So to your left, there's a
I don't know if I could do both.
table to your left. You can set it there, and the camera will pick it
Carol
up.
Feltz, Mayaca City. I'm probably one of the few people that actually drove past this area to get here this morning. And one of the things that we're hearing a lot about in obviously, an election year, is our infrastructure issues. So we've had, if you look at the citizens' comments on what we've been dealing with, and really it's been 2 years of dealing with the FDAB move, the redistricting, the removal of the North Central overlay, all of these kind of things. This has been about a 2-year thing we've been working on. And you still see citizens up here. You still see us writing in. You still see us making public comment. And those different public comments have addressed different issues that we have with this. From the wildlife issues, we should have some sort of a buffer around our state parks. That just makes sense. We should have some sort of a buffer around our water supplies and our water resources and our watersheds. This just makes sense. So we've addressed environmental issues. We've addressed the problem with the wildlife. I'm sorry, but gopher tortoises do not respect state park boundaries. Sir?
I'm motioning to the people behind you.
Can't tell. Anyway, so we've addressed that. Now we have to address the issues of that other people have brought to your attention, you know, the compatibility with the area, alongside the state park. Endangered flora and fauna have both been found in this site. And you know that just recently we voted in a tax increase to purchase lands, and you know that the voters voted that in to save lands from development, and this is a prime example. And I'm sure you're all familiar with our big famous plywood sign with the spray paint that says you're going to miss this. Charlie Hunsaker even used that picture in an LMAC meeting because it's become a symbol of what we're trying to say out there. But the one point, Glenn's touched on the affordable housing. You've heard from the tree huggers on the environmental effects. You've heard from the water people on the water management problems. One of the things we're emphasizing in this election year is our infrastructure. And the bottom line, I drove in from there. I drive there all the time, probably more than anybody else on this board or anybody else does in that area. And we have to face it. We don't have the infrastructure to support this right now. We don't. We can't be out there campaigning based on infrastructure, because maybe we haven't figured out that you can't empty a bucket while you're still filling it up with the hose. So we've got to look at this a little bit factually, and the pace, and the information. I had a wonderful discussion out in the lobby with one of your planners. George, we asked for bigger signs. What we got was something that didn't work, and I'm very glad to say the gentleman has been very glad to work with me on that. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward from the audience to speak on this item? Okay, seeing no one, we can go to the phone on this item. So has anyone called in?
No phone calls.
Okay, we have no phone calls on this item either. We're going to close public comment, and we have one commissioner on the board. It's Commissioner Whitmore. Ma'am.
And Carol, thank you for your comments. This land is not virgin land. This has been approved since the 80s for a school, and whatever it is now, it's not a virgin land. And I agree with the environmental lands. This is not the one, unfortunately, because there is a use to it now. So it's not something, and I don't know, I know SMR owned it at one time, and I think another company owns it now. I'm not sure about that. But what really aggravates me is I'm sitting up here now. We've talked about it so many times. We have not heard. We had a whole summer break. We had the development community agree to sit down around the table to work with us because they have problems with their workers being able to build their houses that don't live here. And Glenn's shaking his head yes. And we know that. There's developers in this very room that pay somebody to go pick up their employees. Okay. They want to be part of the solution. We all do. But we have not formed that committee, and I think we had kind of said Commissioner Cruz was going to be part of that committee. Administration hasn't done it yet. I expect to hear an answer next week on what's going on with that, because every meeting we're going to be talking about affordable housing, and we haven't gotten anywhere. That's not part of this application, but it is part of the solution of what we're hearing today. So next week I want to hear when they're going to put it together, and you know, they can be part of the solution. They got to be brought to the table with, you know, one of our commissioners and our administration. So that I expect next week, and I expect the entire board to know what the heck is going on. And, you know, be careful, yeah, and that's all. But
Thank you.
And again, this is not pristine land, unfortunately. It's not, doesn't have any rights to, there are rights already associated with it, so. But I appreciate your passion.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, my comments are kind of all over the place. I was just taking notes, so forgive me if there's not a thread or narrative associated with this. Relative to the affordable housing, you're right, we haven't said anything. We have had a number of things. In April, we had an all-day affordable housing meeting, and any and all developers could have shown up and give their input on what they were willing to do. I've sat with multiple developers and been in their offices asking them, what do you need to make this happen? We had a big task force meeting over at the Chamber EDC building out in Lakewood Ranch, and we had private companies there, we had foundations there, we had all kinds of people there, a lot of people were invited. John Horn set it up. It was a great meeting of discussing what we can do about affordable housing. So there has been discussions. And every single month, as Glenn knows, we have an Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting. And it's published and noticed on our website. And it's open to the public. Any and all developers, for-profit and nonprofit, are welcome to show up and give comments at those meetings. It's just like every other advisory, but not one has. So yes, we haven't formally set up a meeting time at a specific conference room to have the discussion, but nobody's voluntarily coming forward with any kind of solutions if they're really having issues relative to their people. So it is something we're doing. But then we talk about this not being affordable housing, but I thought that was an interesting comment when it was specifically asked to staff, is affordable housing required? The comment was, it's not required, it's just an incentive. I feel like we don't know what the word incentive means. Like, what's the incentive if it's not required? What's the incentive if the other alternative is just take it for free? That's not really an incentive, because you're basically saying, you can get a density bonus if you give me affordable housing, or you can get a density bonus if you don't give me affordable housing. Where's the incentive associated with that if that's essentially the informal policy we're setting? But because they can build here, and I agree with you, Commissioner Whitmer. Nobody is saying this is pristine land, and I know that's kind of, there's a couple of things that were said that are kind of trying to steer things off course. They can build over 700 homes here right now, and not once has anybody up on this board refuted that. I've never once said, do not go out and build 700 homes. I never once said, keep this quote unquote pristine land. Never once. Build 700 homes. Knock yourself out. That is what is allowable based on our maps, and I honor those maps. Sometimes I may not agree with them, but I honor them. So I'm not implying this is pristine. I'm not trying to compare this to a school or other uses whatsoever. They can do that. And I think it's usable, because I do disagree with Ms. Phelps. There is infrastructure here. It may not be perfect, but there's no perfect infrastructure anyway. But it's on a major state road with plenty of lanes. You got all the north-souths down Bordenside and Neuerland that are connected now, so it's easy access. This is probably one of the better locations for infrastructure in the county right now. Well, not to mention you got the access to the utilities. So if someone wants to build 700 homes there as of right, I'm not going to debate that this is good relative to infrastructure, transportation, utilities. I disagree with that comment. But the rest is, it seems like we're just trying to work our way around things because we say we need to look at all the maps. I've been saying that since my campaign. I think we should start from scratch and look at all of this, because those maps were made a long time ago, and there's been a lot of change in Manatee County, and continuing to come back with spot rezones doesn't make sense. We know what Manatee County looks like in 2022. Let's revisit it and see what do we want it to look like in 2032, 2052, now that we know where we stand today. I 100% agree with that statement. I'd much rather, and I think all of us would have much less stress in our lives if people were showing up asking for rezones that make logical sense based upon a revised map and revised comp plan. So I'm 100% on board. But I do think we're kind of getting out of here just trying to justify things. Like, we're saying we're actually lowering density. We had this discussion last meeting. I mean, we carved out 202 acres from the northeast quadrant, which are as of right 600 homes, and basically said we're going to remove 435 homes from the rest of it because we used it as a percent of land instead of based on actual zoning. So I don't fundamentally agree with that concept that we're lowering the density, because you're still building 606 homes north of 64, whereas you're only removing 432 homes south of it because it was 3% or whatever it was of the land mass, not the percentage of the population. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is just, I believe we honor this. And yes, families are going to come here and ask for more, and then we need to structure our incentives accordingly Fortunately, we pretty much go UF3 for the most part all the way out to the F deadline. So those people with those R1s down there with these big pieces of land aren't really up for an R3 anyway, unless we start moving that line. So that's a discussion for another day. But we can't just base things on economic impact, because by that logic, you build a 10-story condo here, man, the economic impact and the impact fees associated is tremendous. I mean, how much is too much where all we're doing is looking at economic impact? Because what the logic you're trying to bring is that impact fees don't equate to the people moving in creating the impact, and they're free money and not associated dollar for dollar with the people moving in, and the taxes that people are paying are not associated with additional services for the people moving in. I would argue more times than not, the dollars people are paying in are less than the dollars going back out to provide the services and the infrastructure, especially in today's day and age, because it's costing us a fortune to build roads. So I don't see economic impact in and of itself. I'm not saying economic impact, broadly speaking, is important, but looking at it from a single home standpoint, I think is a little bit much. So I think they could build over 700 homes here. It's in a location by a watershed, by a state park. They're already getting a lot of homes in this location. There's nothing I'm going to do about that. I don't disagree with them building that, but I think we're just kind of running through circular references and trying to have people look at shiny objects on the side without looking at the big picture, that this is an R1 zoning, trying to go to an R3 zoning with nothing in exchange for it other than just please give me more density. And unfortunately, we have not got to a point where we have the incentives in place to work something out about that, but I just disagree. I'm sick of giving away free density for absolutely no reason.
Thank you, sir. Well, we've heard it from the applicant, we've heard from staff. Okay, now we have a commissioner on the board. We've held public comment, and now Commissioner Bellamy is on the board.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
One of the ones, I know for a fact I was one of the ones that asked for the transmittal, and I don't take that back at all. The reality of it is I wanted to hear, was this legal? I wanted to hear what DEP and all the other things that the state could possibly respond back, so we can have more information. So I actually think the transmittal step was very, very important, and it's allowed us to get where we are right here. This is the second time you've brought up the fact, but it's the same project though. The second time that you brought up the fact as asking, making sure we address the incentives and get more out of it from the developer. And I'm in support of that. My concern is when a developer has dealt with a project and they maneuvered it to the point to get it to where we are right now, and I may be wrong, it may be too late to start negotiating that, from the dais. I think the very, very important thing is, and this is to all you all, we have an affordable housing issue, all right? We need to separate our egos and find out when we all can sit, when the parties to be can sit down and identify how we're going to address it. There's been 2 or 3 cheap shots taken, but that when you do that, what's going to happen, that's going to impact our community, because the egos are going to step in and individuals are going to be reluctant to work with each other. And that's hurting the people that are out there struggling, trying to find houses. So in my opinion, we need to take a step back, look at the issue professionally, and identify the ways we can move forward and move forward with a sense of humility. That's just me concerning affordable housing. I knew you would address the infrastructure out there in the Eastern Quadrant, because concerning, in the areas that I'm in, obviously when you start talking about infrastructure, you do have some a lot of concerns. Glenn stated something about, integrating the homes, and I do think diverse communities are very, very important. And I think the way that it's addressed is the communication within the individuals meeting together, so when they start planning, that's the initial phase of the plan. I don't think from the dais, and I may be wrong, I don't think from a dais when you have someone, a developer or an entity come up and they've already developed and they present their site plan, all of a sudden we say, hey, we want we want affordable housing, we want workforce housing. I think we should be proactive instead of reactive. And that's an opportunity for us to find ways for us to work together. And I may be wrong, and I'm sure your response on it. I was excited to hear the economic impact. I'm excited to hear the economic, and I felt like, that was a chess move. In all due honesty, I felt like that was a chess move. But I do agree that there are other issues out there that when you're concerning this project. But the transmittal moving forward, in my opinion, gave me what I needed to have in order for me to, be ready to put my vote forward. So I'm sure there'll be some other comments. We'll go from there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ball.
I almost hate to even say a word about this. I think if we look back at our tapes, we will find that, yes, we did have developers, some developers, as Ed said, that was willing to volunteer their time to help us in redoing our comprehensive plan, which definitely needs to be done. So there's been a lot of things that have taken place. Unfortunately, it is one of those things, and not to mention that we were on recess. So the bottom line is, I think I spoke to Courtney DePaul and asked her about that, and we're going to have a consultant, according to her, look at our comprehensive plan to make it a little bit more sturdy, if you will. Give us more, not so much leadway, but here's what it is. So I'm hoping that Courtney in the building department, she's doing a great job. I'm hoping that they can get on that. But in the meantime, I think that Commissioner Cruz has done a great job with affordable housing, the committee. I'm not finding fault with that at all. Right now, what I am hearing and seeing, and I know, is that unfortunately, this project does meet the comprehensive plan as it is written. So we need to be looking at that probably, again, sooner than later, and I'm hoping that Ms. DePaul can help with that. I know she's hit her button, so she's going to say something, but, we do need to be looking at this, and we do need to have home builders, developers, everyone involved in this scenario. I'm not going to sit here on this dais and start criticizing the administration. If you want to say something, make it in a positive fashion to help move things forward. We're not perfect. None of us up here are. Not you, Ricky. No. None of us are perfect. And not you either. I didn't mean that to you. So we just need to remember that we represent probably now about 415,000 people in Manatee County, and we have a job to do, which means our comprehensive plan and other things does need to be looked at because we are bigger than we were in 1989. So, and I do feel that we definitely need our home builders and developers in that process. They are Manatee County citizens, and they've done a lot of good. Contrary to what some people do believe, they've done a lot of good in the community, and they need to be involved just as commissioners and everybody else does, and private citizens, as Glenn said. So I think we're all in the same place. We're just a little bit ahead of the game, maybe. So if we could just, move this forward, Mr. Chairman, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Deputy County Administrator DePaul.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Chairman. And I do mimic a lot of the commissioner's comments. We need to take a look at the comprehensive plan. I've discussed this with staff. We have several new people who have joined our group who have been phenomenal additions. I think a consultant would help to ensure that this project, so to speak, stays on task while we can still accomplish what the citizens and the people in the community need us to do from a staff standpoint, so we can still do that and no one experienced any delays. But that all being said, that's going to be a collaborative effort with folks in public works, with folks in utilities, and the county is definitely growing and continues to grow. We're actually doing population projections in our development section right now. So yes, so that is definitely something that we're going to take on, and we will bring back to the commissioners every step of the way and provide you all feedback. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The order of the board is Bellamy, Servia, Whitmore. Commissioner Bellamy.
Check. Yeah, I was just interested in hearing about setting a date and time for those meetings. Is it? I just want them to connect. Is there a date and time that you already meet with affordable housing So I'm sure Mr. Neal and Mr. Vogel,
They're monthly meetings. It's an advisory board meeting.
it's an advisory board.
I don't know off
Were
the
you
top
all
of my
aware
head
of
which one it
that,
is.
sir?
It's on the
I'm
calendar.
just curious. Is that?
He can be
Okay.
added to the mailing list, to email list. That's no
Thank
big
you.
deal. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you. And just my thoughts to summarize, affordable housing is a crisis here. We all understand that, but we have to address that issue legislatively. It is not the appropriate place to address it during a specific comp plan amendment. It just isn't. Our comp plan and our code has been outdated for 20 years. I've stood on that side of the dais and this side of the dais saying it, and I'll continue to say it until we hire an outside party to get it done. I don't agree with Commissioner Baugh that the developers should rewrite the comp plan, although they would like to do that. You did say that. But we do need an expert. We do need an expert to come in and do that and decide how we're going to address affordable housing. And Commissioner Cruz, you're on the committee. You have announced that you are handling this. Bring us something forward. Bring us something forward legislatively. I was at the meeting when I heard several developers say that they would be willing to sit on a committee. It was not this county affordable housing committee. It was a separate offer. So everybody needs to come to the table. Yes, we're in a crisis. Yes, we need solutions. And we do that by writing regulations into our comp plan and our code that make sense and are approved through duly noticed public hearings. That's it.
Okay, so we're going to give Commissioner Cruz an opportunity to respond, and then the order of the board is Whitmore, Baugh, DePaul. Commissioner Cruz.
Just to make sure we're on the same page, I brought forth half dwelling units last November. We're still waiting for that to get signed up. I brought forth allowing residential on all zoning classifications back in April. We're still waiting on that. I brought forth putting residential over commercial. I brought forth having in lieu payments instead of density bonuses to allow people to take the very density we're talking about now while contributing to an affordable house fund. I brought forth taking a portion of our millage like we do with our libraries and putting it into dedicated affordable housing as opposed to increasing taxes or taking it elsewhere. I brought forth a number of legislative things. There's 6 other people on this board. Any of them can take that and run or speak with our staff and ask why they haven't been brought back yet, because as Dr. Hopes will tell you, I bring it up almost once a week with him and ask him when it's coming back. In fact, I have a meeting with him in the next couple weeks to specifically talk about the timeline for them coming back. I don't handle our staff, as both of you and Commissioner Server, you point out often that our staff does a great job, but we do not control them. We do not tell them what to do in the timing of it. All we do is set direction and then rely on them to bring it back. We have set direction. I spent a lot of time putting together a lot of proposals. I believe I brought 8 of them forward previously. 7 of them were discussed by this board as something you wanted to see more on. I am waiting as much as you're waiting. So don't act like I'm not responding to or trying to do anything with affordable housing. I go to every affordable housing meeting in this town often. I was just at a Habitat for Humanity event last weekend. I'm at a ribbon cutting tomorrow. I do a lot with the affordable housing. So to imply that I took lead of it and I'm doing nothing is just entirely disingenuous.
Okay. Commissioner Satcher, you're the only one that has not weighed in here. The order of the board is Whitmore, Baugh, DePaul, Servia, but before everyone speaks for a second or third time, I think it's fair to offer him an opportunity to speak. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Yeah, just listening to the debate and the discussion, and some of it is familiar. I just think it ought to be clear, at least from my perspective, that I'm listening to what George has to say real clear. And also want it to be clear that there's not a lot of, we can follow the numbers as far as where this percentage is and, okay, but we're taking things off the books before we're putting things on the books. And now all of a sudden a tax is for the benefit of the whole community. I'm not a big fan of taxes. So anyway, I just want it to be clear that regardless of where this vote goes on any side, that it's not going to be because there's some trick being played or because somebody's buying into something that people are trying to sell. And that goes for, the other commissioners as well. I mean, I disagree with what most of the commissioners are saying. And so the truth is that it just wouldn't take much. And I always want to check my vote every single time. If I find myself on the same side as someone that has a fundamentally different way of looking at government and of our role on the commission, if I find myself on the same side as them, I am always going to really check and examine my vote very closely. And so I don't agree with the way, Commissioner Servia, brings her views on most votes. Very different way of looking at things. It's a very liberal mindset. Same thing with Commissioner Whitmore. And so when I really am thinking about going the other way. And I just want to make that noted. I want that to make that clear. We'll see where this vote goes in specific. But I think that that's something that should be known. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Please stop. This is not a liberal or conservative meeting. This is a land use meeting, and I'm making my decisions on the facts. We did ask to pull together this affordable housing meeting with the development community at the last meeting or before our break. That is a fact. I assumed that somebody would meet with them, and I thought administration said they'd do it. And really, there's a lot of staff has quit, and all the 8 things you're talking about, there's new people on, and unfortunately it may be getting lost. So, and they're very busy because we are busy in the building development world. And then it was I thought then you would bring it to your affordable housing board as an agenda item, not just have them coming to every meeting, but at least come up with what their ideas were. I mean, I remember Mr. Vogler here has some experience in this in his past life, and he offered to bring that to you. So I would be glad to meet with him, but I assumed you wanted to handle this. I mean, anybody could meet with them, and you're right, but I didn't want to tread on anybody's toes. So if you want me to start the initial meeting with the development community and then have them bring an agenda item to your affordable board, we can do that. I just assumed you wanted to run with it. And I'm sorry if I misunderstood what you wanted, and I'll do whatever you want.
So I'm going to go ahead and let Commissioner Cruz respond, but then after that, we need to stay get ourselves focused on the agenda item.
The scope, but I don't know what this has to do with this project whatsoever.
Brought up by one of the applicants.
No, that's fine. But I still want to stay focused and respect everyone's time. We have a lot of people out here with a lot of other agenda. But I will say I have gone over to Mr. Neal's office and met with Ivory about affordable housing. I have met with Carlos Broof and the Medallion people about this. I've also talked to the nonprofit side, like Glenn and Steve Reinhardt and Mark Van Groff and others about this. We actually have brought a number of my policies up in the affordable housing. We just had a whole presentation on half dwelling units from Bill O'Shea last meeting. So these are things we're moving through the affordable housing board as well. They are being dual tracked in real time, but I also, anybody up here can certainly take the reins and run with it. I mean, you're working on the 17th Street thing, which goes along with that, and Reggie's working on the veteran housing, which goes along with that. We all should be focusing to some extent on it. I don't think anyone of us have a singular right to
tread on your
handle
toes.
it, by all means.
Okay.
Mrs. DePaul, do you have anything to add related specifically to the agenda item?
No, I was just going to close out the affordable housing perhaps, and that might help, but we're working through all of the motions that Cruz brought forth at a public meeting. It was a workshop. We are going to offer updates on that through Arena's group, but we're working each and every one of those. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for the update. So there are no commissioners on the board. We've held public comment, heard from the applicant and staff. We're going to go ahead and entertain motions at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
We have a motion by Commissioner Baugh to approve the item on the floor, and a second by Commissioner Bellamy. I suppose we should do a roll call vote on this.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't know that it is.
Get my pen and paper out.
Mr. Chair,
Ma'am.
just for clarification, it would be the Alternative motion for adoption of Plan Amendment PA 2101, Ordinance 2227.
Yes.
Commissioner Baugh?
What?
Do you
I was just
agree?
clarifying
sorry.
approved
Clarif-
and adoption.
I was
She was
thinking about
clarifying the
something I was
motion.
saying.
Do you agree to the
Yes.
clarification? Commissioner Bellamy?
Check.
Okay, so the seconder agrees as well. We'll move forward with the vote. Commissioner Satcher, we're going to move forward with the vote, sir. District 1
Aye.
is an aye. District 2,
Yes.
aye. District 3, aye. District 4,
Aye.
5,
Yeah, aye.
6,
Aye.
Come on, George.
7.
Come on, George.
Madam Clerk, the motion passes by a vote of 6 to 1 with Commissioner Cruz in opposition.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment, please, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, I've heard a lot of going back and forth here, and I think that we need to remember, number one, that we all have the same thing in mind. We want things to be the best it can be in Manatee County. And I think that, you know, Courtney DePaul has come in, she's doing a great job. She knows what this board wants, what we're looking for, and we need to give her an opportunity to do her job. I think that Commissioner Cruz has done an excellent job on affordable housing, on the Affordable Housing Committee. I don't want to change that. I think he has a lot to offer. And I did say, and I will repeat it, that when this meeting goes about, I want some of our home builders and developers involved in this process because they are the ones that are doing the building, and they should be in it. I did not say, however, that they're the only ones that should be on this committee. In fact, I commented about how many citizens we have in Manatee County, but as usual, things get turned around. So let's move forward in a positive fashion. I think that we have a lot to do in this county, and we need to stop bickering and trying to change things around and really work together to accomplish what we need to accomplish for our citizens. Thank you, sir, for letting me say that.
Thank you, ma'am. We're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute recess. It's 10:21. This meeting will resume at 10:31. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are resuming our land use meeting, and we're going to jump ahead in the agenda and wrap up presentations upon request. And looking at the agenda, that seems like a more efficient way to move this along. So, Deputy Director DePaul, would you please, Deputy Administrator, excuse me, DePaul, would you please introduce 6, 7, and 8, just sort of move us through those three?
6, 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we're all going to introduce them all together, but if you would walk us through those,
Okay.
those 4.
Agenda item number 6 is Z-21-10. It's the Chong. Anyone correction? No idea how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Property rezone. Shah and Mali Shawn are the owners. PLN 2109-0176. It's quasi-judicial. The item number 7, Z-21-12, is the VOT Partners LLC rezone, Reasoner Family Partnership Limited. PLN 21100030, quasi-judicial. Number 8 is PDR-21-26ZG, Christensen Parcel, Christensen LLC as the owner. PLN 2110-0115 is quasi-judicial. And then agenda item number 9, Z-21-13, Mad Marks rezone, Mad Mark Stereo Warehouse, Inc. as the owner, PLN 2111-0043, and again, that's quasi-judicial.
Thank you, ma'am. Rosina, do you have anything to add to the introductions?
And the entire description of the projects?
I don't need that.
You don't need it?
Okay, why don't we start with number 6? First of all, does anyone have any ex parte communication that they would like to disclose on any of those items?
Okay, so Mr. Chair, we gotta be not too expeditious here. We have to go each one.
Yeah.
So we'll start with item 6. Does anyone
Yeah.
have ex parte communication to disclose on item 6? Okay, not hearing any. Then first we'll ask if is the applicant here, and would they like to make a presentation on item 6? Applicant is going to waive that. Well, it's quasi judicial, so I still have to go through the proper chain here. So then, obviously, we have no questions for the applicant. Staff, Rosina, if you would just give us a quick overview.
Mr. Chair?
Ma'am.
We need to sign in anyone who's speaking during quasi-judicial.
Swear in. Okay, anyone who plans to speak on any quasi judicial item today, please stand now. We'll swear you all at once.
Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and representations you're about to make to the Board of County Commissioners are truthful and accurate?
I do.
Thank you. When you step to the podium, please state your name if you've been sworn and your county of residence.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Rosina, would you give us a quick overview of number 6,
Yeah.
please?
Item number 6 is a rezone of more or less 3.006 acres from PDR, coastal high hazard, to residential single-family, 1 dwelling units per acre. The site is located south of I-275 and has potential for 3 dwelling units.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for staff? All right, hearing none, we'll move forward with public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on item number 6 on today's agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we will close public comment. Still, there is no one on the board. So then, applicant, do you have any comments before we close this? Okay, we're entertaining motions.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Cruz for approval and a second by Commissioner Baugh. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Satcher is an aye. All right. Madam Clerk, it passes by a vote of 7-0. We're going to move on to number 7. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward to speak on this item? Okay. Rosina, could you give us,
Way to read the room.
do we have any ex parte communications on item 7? Okay, there are none. Rosina?
And this is a rezone of more or less 4.42 acre for residential single-family mobile homes, 6 dwelling units per acre, to residential multifamily, 16 dwelling units per acre, and the site is north of 53rd Street West, and is within an urban corridor.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Seeing none, we'll open this to public comment. Is anyone from the public here who would like to come forward now to speak on item number 7? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close public comment. Applicant, do you have any rebuttal? Okay. We're entertaining motions.
I move approval of the recommended motion.
Second.
We have a motion
me.
by Commissioner Serbia for
Chair.
approval. Hold on, and we have a second by Commissioner Cruz. Madam,
Well, yeah, we're on the habit of saying recommended motions. They're alternative motions, so I would rephrase.
I move
I move
approval.
approval of the alternative motion to
Thank you.
approve.
Say it again.
so we have a motion to approve the alternative motion by Commissioner Serbia. Does the seconder agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move forward with the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Madam Clerk, it passes by a vote of 7-0. We're going to move on to number 8. Is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward to speak or present? No. Does anyone have any ex parte communication that they would like to disclose on item 8? Okay, hearing none. We'll go to staff. Rosina, would you give us a brief description of item 8?
This is a rezone with a general development plan of more or less 15 acres located on the east side, on the west side of Ellington Gillette Road, and the proposal is to rezone from A1, suburban agriculture, to PDR, and in the general development plan include 93 residential units that could be single-family or multifamily.
Thank you, Rosina. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, no commissioner questions. We'll open this to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on item number 8 on today's land use agenda? All right, seeing no one, we're going to close public comment, and we'll entertain motions.
Mr.
Recommend
Chair,
approval.
go ahead,
Ladies
Mr.
first.
Bellamy, Commissioner.
First, he said.
Canadian standoff here.
Actually, approve the recommended motion.
Second.
Excuse me,
Ah,
Mr. Chair.
What's the terminology?
Well, we're all saying recommended motion, and as
The
do I as
approval
well.
motion.
But we have to say, I move the alternative motion for approval.
Yes,
I move the alternative motion for approval.
second.
We have a motion for the alternative motion for approval by Commissioner Bellamy and a second by Commissioner Baugh. All in favor, please say aye.
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 What is an alternative
Wait, Commissioner
motion?
Satcher?
That was an aye.
He's an aye.
She asked
Madam
it
Clerk,
too.
that passes by a vote of 7-0.
Yeah, just, excuse me, for clarification, we don't have recommended motions anymore. We have alternative motions, one's for approval, one's for denial. So that's why I was just clarifying for the record, it was for approval.
So that's new. Okay, thank you. I thought I missed something.
Okay, we're going to move on then to number 9. Is the applicant here? Number 9, sir, would you like to come forward? He'll hold off. Okay, is there any ex parte communication involving item number 9, Commissioners?
Yeah.
All right, hearing none, then we will go to staff. Rosina, if you give a brief
Yeah,
description.
this is a rezone of 0.30 acres south of US 41 along the 30 Avenue East, and is rezoned from R residential multifamily 6 to general commercial.
Thank you, Rosina. Seeing no one on the board with staff questions, we'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on item number 9 on today's land use agenda? Seeing no one, we will close public comment. Would the applicant like to rebut? Okay. Then, in that case, we're going to entertain motions.
Move to approve the approval motion.
Alternative.
Alternative motion
Working with that,
for
with that.
approval.
We have a motion by Commissioner Baugh to approve the alternative motion and a second by Commissioner Bellamy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Madam Clerk, item number 9 passes by a vote of 7-0. This brings us to item number 4, which is a development services item. There is a presentation scheduled after this. Just so everyone is clear, we'll be moving to item number 5. So,
So going back to number 4.
Ms.
un-
DePaul.
Under presentation scheduled, you have PA-22-02, Ordinance 22-20, Project Innovation. This is a county-initiated large-scale comp plan amendment, PLN 2201-0055. It's legislative, and then it's followed by, I can go into item number 5. Yes? Can I read number 5? Sarah?
No, just do this one first.
Just 4, okay. And we have a consultant here who's assisted us with this project.
Rosina, do you need to add anything to the introduction?
Yes, I would like to add that this is a change of the future land use category from UF3 to MU for 98 acres, part of a larger parcel that is 159 acres located east of I-75 and south of State Road 64. And also we are, this included D5 provision to limit the density and intensity of the site from 390 dwelling units and 992 2,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Here represented Manatee County is Mr. Kelly Klepper, IICP, with Kinley Horns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rosina. Good morning, everybody. For the record, Kelly Klepper with Kimley Horn and Associates, and more importantly, a Manatee County resident for 17-plus years. District 1, Commissioner Satcher. We are here today at...
All right.
There it is. On behalf of the county, this is a publicly initiated comprehensive plan amendment. As Rosina said, it is a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. And I will tell you that there is going to be a corresponding subsequent rezone and general development plan that will be following this in a couple of, I would think, a couple of months. However, at the time, we're moving forward with the comprehensive plan request. There we go. I was going to say if we could have the screen. With me today is Ms. Monet Moore, one of our senior planners with Kimley Horn, has been an integral part to the team in corresponding and working directly with county staff. Also have Mr. Ryan Hoppy, who's a professional engineer, has been working with the county with respect to the utilities and the stormwater, especially in this particular area. And also a name that is known to several in this commission, Mr. Bob Agrusa, who is our traffic and transportation engineer and has been working with that staff with respect to potential traffic-related items on this project. So what we're here today is to talk about and actually have it's a dual request. As Rosina said, the first is a county-initiated comprehensive plan amendment from the UF3 to the mixed use for a portion of the current property. It's about 98 acres, and we'll show it to you in a minute on the map. So we're asking for a comprehensive plan, so basically a map amendment for about 2/3 of the current property. And the second request, as Rosina said, is a site-specific or text amendment using the D5 provisions to limit or create a maximum cap for the amount of development. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. As you can see on the screen here, we are in the southeast quadrant of I-75 and State Route 64. We're about 700 feet south of 64. Immediately adjacent to us, of course, on our western boundary is Lena Road, which is proposed to be extended all the way to the south to State Route 70 and also connecting up with 44th Avenue. Immediately to our east and south is county-owned property with the solid waste facility. To the north is vacant property. Northwest of us, of course, is Heritage Harbor, Costco. There's also the new Coastal Orthopedics, convenience stores, and other commercial development that's been occurring over the last several months and a couple of years. So when you start looking at this property, you start to see that there's been quite a bit of amount of agricultural activities going on the property. There are some limitations that we have with respect to some natural and environmental features. And there's also, of course, a fairly large FP&L easement that bisects the property running north to south. It's about 330 feet wide. And when you look at it that on the maps, that's that teal color that's designated as the PSP. So the hatched area that you see that's kind of in the orange color, that's the current UF3, and what we're requesting is a continuation, or I'll say a continuation from the western portions of the property of the mixed use. A lot of what we're proposing could be done within the UF3. However, when I say it's a little bit more flexible in what we're trying to do, especially on behalf of the county from an economic development perspective, it provides additional flexibility. It also provides some additional safeguards and safety measures for the county and the potential or the future end user of the property. So this is the current zoning, and as I said, we will be following up with a rezoning and a request for a GDP for the entirety of the property. As Rosina said, the entirety of the property is approximately 160 acres, so you'll see that fairly soon. One of the things that we did as part of our analysis, actually we're missing a map. I'll go back to this one just for a second. Did want to kind of identify, of course, you all know this better than anybody else. This has been a highly developed corridor and quadrant of the county for some time. We've seen an increased amount of development. We've seen an increased amount of mixed-use components, whether it be residential, office, commercial. There's interest in I'll say, some of those employment-generating industrial uses as well. And this makes a logical extension going from west to east, especially knowing what is immediately adjacent to the property, which is the county-owned facility. One of the things that we also did when we were looking at this was also to start looking at some of the other development patterns, the traffic patterns, the effects and potential effects on the traffic and transportation on the mobility network. Also on infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater, you name it. So we have looked at all of those items as it relates to this specific request. And there again, the proposed mixed use or the requested mixed use provides the greatest amount of flexibility for the county moving forward in the development and redevelopment of this property. So what are some positive aspects that we have? One, we've identified through our analysis that this is a logical transition from west to east. It provides the greatest amount of flexibility. It will also serve as a transition from the north and to the county solid waste facility. One of the things that we also looked at was the UF3, of course, is primarily residential in nature. We would definitely not recommend that as a standalone use or in a typical residential setting that you would see here. However, the mixed use provides that true mix of uses, so there can be both residential, commercial, office, as well as the industrial types of uses. And then more importantly, and this is probably one of the biggest things that we did look at, especially with that second bullet, is this will provide the opportunity for some much needed and identified jobs producing types of industries that we have here. So there again, we're talking about something that provides flexibility. We're talking about something that is consistent with the comprehensive plan. We've identified through a number of the provisions of the comprehensive plan and the various elements, including the economic components, that this is supported by the county's long-range vision. A negative aspect, and you see there's only one, we try to, of course, minimize this, is just the access to Lena Road and the ongoing improvements that's being necessitated in that area. Those improvements are actually ongoing with or without this project. However, this does have a slight impact on that and the network itself. Some mitigating factors, there again, kind of takes care of one of the negatives, is that there is an existing capital improvement project that's identified for this area. It also provides the additional connections both to the north as well as to the south, and then further down with the 44th Avenue project. And also that there are some potential mitigation components that we're looking at through the GDP for the on-site environmental, stormwater, and the utilities. This is just a quick summary of the existing environmental and natural features that are on the site, and we have been working with the county staff on this. Of course, we've been working with Clark and his staff with respect to traffic and transportation, also with utilities. And then in keeping with the alternative motion, of course, we are asking for the affirmative alternative motion to transmit this to the state and then, of course, bring this back as part of a formal adoption, and also would allow us to proceed with the rezoning and the GDP approval. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, sir. I have Commissioners Whitmore and Baugh on the board. Commissioner Whitmore.
Thank you. I met with staff regarding this and also our attorney, because I thought at one point Musgrave had something in it that it could only be a certain use, but it was defined in the agreement, which she looked up, was a public purpose. So I asked her, was this a public purpose? And it's poorly defined, so it probably is a public purpose of what we're going to do. What I see this is because it's been in our CIP, and I'm all about making sure everything is in order. So what we'd have to do is adjust our CIP because we borrowed money from utilities, like half of the funds for this project when we did buy it. So we'd have, and from what I've heard from day one, it would have to be paid back to utilities. So whatever happens here, we just have to clean everything up in accounting. And also, I know the sheriff put $3 million out of his budget into this. I don't know if it ever got moved over to where it's going now, the fleet facility. So that kind of stuff, financial management will take up. But I just wanted to make sure that the board remembers that there are a lot of things that we use to pay for this that have to be cleaned up as far as counting purposes. Other than that, I have no problems with it. There are mitigation wetlands that impacts, and I think there's an FPL line there too.
Yes, ma'am.
And so we just have to, that's owned by FPL, correct? So whoever buys that land has to comply with whatever you have to when the FPL goes right through your property, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Baugh.
Yes, sir. When you're ready, I'd like to make a motion for transmittal, please. When you're ready.
Ma'am, I think you can make the motion. I don't have anyone else on the board.
Public hearing?
You have to do,
We'll do public comment, but if you want to make your motion,
The public, let's follow the legislation.
pursue, do public comment
that's
first.
fine. We'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone. Anyone called in? No callers today. Okay, thank you. We're going to close public comment. Commissioner Baugh.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for transmittal of Plan Amendment PA-22-02 slant, Ordinance 22-20.
I'll second that. So we have a motion by Commissioner Baugh and a second by Van Ostenbridge. Servia is on the board. Commissioner Servia.
I just want to say to Kelly, excellent presentation, excellent write-up. Thank you very much for thoroughly addressing everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Ms. Shank, do you have anything to add before we move forward?
Yes, I just want to clarify for the record that several commissioners had requested another review, just refresh our recollections of the cooperative agreement regarding Central County Complex, ended in 2020, when the county purchased the property. And I just wanted to clarify that the project site can be used for any valid public purpose, which is broadly defined. The only limitation is that it can't be used for an expansion of the landfill. And as far as financing, the agreement acknowledges that the county, through issuance of bonds and budgeting of legally available funds, is used to purchase and complete certain improvements to the property, but the county is not obligated to design, permit, or construct any future improvements on the project. I mean, that's up to the future discretion of the board.
Good. Thank you, ma'am. All right, we have a motion on the floor, a second. We've held public comment. There are no commissioners on the board. We'll move forward with the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Madam Clerk, it passes unanimously by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you very much, Commissioners, and thank you, Rosina.
Good job.
All right. Ms. DePaul, if you would please introduce item number 5.
Yes, I apologize. Number 5, PDMU-21-16 ZG McClure Eisenhower, McClure Properties Limited as the owner, EPG Parish LLC is the contract purchaser, and that's PLN 2108-0034. And again, it's a quasi-judicial item. We've got Dorothy Rainey as our principal planner on this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Rosina, is there anything you'd like to add to the introduction?
A rezone of more or less 988 acres from PDR to PDMU, and a general development plan for 1,900 dwelling units and 200,000 square feet of commercial offices. And the site is located north of Moccasin Water Road and south of Buckeye Road. And the applicant is asking to approve a schedule of permitted and prohibited uses as voluntary proffered by them.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, would anyone like to disclose ex parte communication on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the applicant. Who's here to represent the applicant? Sir, please state your first, your last name, your county of residence.
Good morning, Commissioners. Caleb Grimes, Manatee County, and I am here representing the owner and applicant. I'm pleased to be here to be working with the McClure family that is the owner of this particular site. With me today from them is Mr. Bob Spencer and his son, Peyton Spencer, and we also have Mr. Todd McClure with us. This is a site that the McClure family has owned for many years and has farmed over the years. And as you have seen, it is now a site that is north of Moccasin Waller Road, going all the way up to Buckeye Road, and it is east of I-75 and west of the Amazon property, the Havel property, and adjacent to those, and just east of the Eagle Point development. And I also have with us today from the contract purchaser, EP Parish LLC, Mr. Steve Luce, and is here in case you have some questions of him. Our engineer and planners on this site are ZNS, and we have Mr. Nathan Crott, engineer here, if we have questions on engineering, and Cam Miller, planner with ZNS, who you will hear from in just a minute to tell you more about the project. Environmental, Brian Skidmore with Ardura. Traffic, Mr. Steve Henry with Links and Associates are all here. And the tract, due to its location, is fairly unique in that it's now right in the middle of developments that have been approved all the way around it. And even though it's nearly 1,000 acres, it's almost like an infill project in that it has the same things around it. I think you'll be glad to hear that we are not asking for any comprehensive plan amendment. Comprehensive plan is acceptable, so we don't plan to have to pay for units. I'm just kidding. You know that.
You wouldn't anyway.
Touche. Touche.
The site is interesting. Since 1990, it has been zoned PDR, but without a plan. So it has PDR zoning already. But interestingly, Sawgrass Road is planned to go right up through the middle of it, and which will be built with this development. And because of that, it ends up with having a node right at Sawgrass and Moccasin Wallow, and one up at Sawgrass and Buckeye. So we are also, as you will see, planning on some minimal amount of commercial, because as this area develops, we have recognized that we need to have some commercial that will serve the area, serve the neighborhood. So that is why it is being asked to rezone, even though it's predominantly PDR, it's being asked to be rezoned to PDMU so that the commercial can go along with it. So as Rosina indicated, and as you'll see a little more specifically, it's 1,900 dwelling units, which in the UF3 still is only 1.98 units per acre. 201,000 square feet of commercial on 28 acres, which is a very low FAR. And so at this time, I'm going to ask Cam Miller to come up and tell you a little more specifics about the project. Thank you, Cam.
Right, thank you, Caleb. Hello, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Cameron Miller. I'm a planner with ZNS Engineering, and I have been sworn. So I think Mr. Grimes covered everything very well, so I'll keep this moving short and sweet. Here's an aerial map of the site. Along the south, you'll see Moccasin Wallow. It has a 20-year classification as a 6-lane arterial. Buckeye Road to the north there has a 20-year classification as a 4-lane collector. Here's the future land use map. As you can see, predominantly UF3 with a little bit of MU, mixed use, to the south there. The blue lines represent the road extensions that are proposed. The north-south blue line represents the Sawgrass Road extension, and the east-west line represents FF Road. Here's the zoning map. As Mr. Grimes already described, we are currently zoned as PDR for a long time as PDR. As you can see, this area is generally PDMU. We're hoping to match that concept and match this development trend. Here's the general development plan. As you can see, the residential area is 960 acres, approximately 1,900 units. We are well under the permitted density, and we are exceeding the open space requirement with 46%. The commercial is 21.84 acres. Like Mr. Grimes said, well below the FAR requirement, proposing 20% open space. We are proposing some wetland impacts, 2.37 acres for proper roadway alignment, which is permitted per section 706.5.B.2.C in the LDC. Touching again on the point that Mr. Grimes was making about being an infill project, as you can see, this is a map pulled from the GIS website with the county. The purple represents previously approved or permitted residential projects. The light blue is mixed-use development projects. The pink represents another type of residential development. So we're hoping to get a PDMU matches the general concept of this area and development trend. We are proposing one specific approval request. It is to limit the cul-de-sacs and dead-end streets past the maximum length of 800 feet that requires to be constructed per Manatee County Public Works. We are asking to exceed this maximum length to allow for placement of streets to avoid any environmentally sensitive areas within the project, if needed. And there is a stipulation to limit that length to 1,320 feet with mid-block turnarounds to meet that intent of LDC section 1001.4.d.1. So that is a quick spiel on all the planning and zoning aspects of it. I'll hand it back to Mr. Grimes, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Cam. I appreciate that. Appreciate it straight and to the point. I do want to emphasize on the specific approval request. This is something we have done a few times before. It is limited to if it is needed to avoid impacts to wetlands, to get from one part to another. This site, as you saw, is typical up here. It's got wetlands scattered all over it. We're staying out of every one except for where your thoroughfare roads have to be. And so this is one that would only come into effect if when you get into the final design of this site, to get from A to B, you need to go through a wetland to avoid a longer cul-de-sac. So it is not something that we expect to use. We don't think it will, but we haven't had the final engineering done yet. So as you can see, the site is very consistent with your comprehensive plan. The commercial uses are limited to the nodes which are allowed in the UF3. The density is well under the UF3 category. So we would appreciate your making a recommendation of approval of the alternative that allows development, that approves the development.
Yeah, why did they change that?
And, well, what you have, Ms. Whitmore, and I think it's a good thing, is they give you two alternative motions.
Oh.
One is if you decide you want to deny it, you have an alternative motion to deny it. So if you say, I move the recommended motion, you have two of them up there, and you have to say which one it is. And Ms. Schenk is accurate in that, and we'll just have to remember to say that each time going forward. Be glad to answer any questions. Pretty straightforward, consistent with everything around it, and look forward to your approval.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Whitmore is on the board with a question. Ma'am?
And Caleb, you can answer these because you have history in this area. First of all, there are about 136 acres of wetlands and only 2.37 are being affected, correct?
That I'm sure that's the number. I don't have it off the top of my head.
I got it off the
Yeah.
report. Okay.
Yes, it's a very small number.
Okay.
And it's for roadways.
You've been in the area for a long time. As long as I can remember, it's been farming since at least the 70s, probably longer.
Longer.
Yeah. And this is, again, because I know there's some people in the audience that wonder why we do such things. This is already a PDR without a site plan. So it already has, it's not ag. I mean, it's zone PDR, correct?
Just a brief history of it, when the comprehensive plan was put on it, it was put on as a UF3, which means it was designed for low to moderate density residential since 1989. And in 1990, when we zoned, it was given a PDR designation of zoning, which was to recognize that it would be used for residential. And it's been that since 1990.
Okay. Would you concur that the runoff from farming, with what you're planning on doing, improves the water quality?
Well, I am not a water quality expert, but what I can say is that as we go through the development, we will have to design our stormwater systems, and we will have to collect and treat runoff from all impervious areas, and we will have to meet quality and quantity design requirements. And in every one of these I've ever been in, the engineers that do this say that that's a lot better than having runoff from cattle that is untreated
now. So, like I say, I'm not the expert on that. We have environmentalists here if you would like, an engineer if you'd like to hear from them.
No, just from experience up here, that's usually the case.
Yes.
And staff, I talked to staff, this is active ag, and they don't see any gopher turtles there. So, and I know you still have to go and.
We will
if
have to
there is,
study
but
that.
it's usually with an active ag, you don't see any, but you still have to go through the process. And
We
there's
will
wood
go
stuff.
through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Satcher is on the board next. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, as the District 1 Commissioner, change and growth, there's pressure on that area. And to see a project like this come forward that is, 2 units per acre and then has some commercial mixed in with it, this is, in my mind, what we should be looking for. And so I just applaud you for bringing this forward. 2 acres out of 1,000, impact on the wetlands. It's hard to ask for anything better than that. And so just want to say thank you. And with that, I move for approval of the alternative motion for.
You got it right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Got it right over everybody.
We are not to that point yet, but I will go back to you when we get there. How's that? Commissioners, any additional questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, thank you, sir. Then we will go to a staff presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dorothy Rainey for staff, and I have been sworn. Oh, there it is. I get used to the new thing here. So before you, of course, you have McClure Eisenhower Properties Limited. Request consists of a rezone of the 988.68 acres. It's considered a large project from the PDR zoning it currently has to the PDMU. Approval of a general development plan for 1,900 residential units on the 960.54 acres of the entire site at a density of 1.98 dwelling units per acre, and then the 201,000 square feet of commercial, retail, and office uses on the 3 out parcels totaling 28.14 acres. The FAR ends up being 0.16 out of the allowable 0.35. And then there's also a land use equivalency matrix that was part of the transportation study that was approved to allow for exchange between uses as the market dictates, of course. It's Exhibit C to the ordinance, and there are stipulations provided by the transportation staff who reviewed it and approved it, restricting it and guiding them on how to make use of it. Again, the site is 4 acres.
Who's supposed to be?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Doc. We'll
On the ball. Okay, so 4 parcels totaling 988.68 acres. Again, this is existing zoning PDR, and it has a UF3 future land use category with a corridor of PSP1 for the utilities power lines that are going to be put through there or may already, I don't think they're there yet. The uses, vacant land, ag uses. The 3 out parcels proposed for non-residential development, I will point those out later. Again, the future land use UF3, and there's the corridor running north-south as well as on the southeast edge of the property. Zoning, as the applicant indicated, it's PDR, but surrounded by other already PD zone properties that have been approved for development. There's an aerial of the site. The surrounding uses to the north is Buckeye Road and some vacant property zone PDMU. To the south, Moccasin Wallow Road and Summerwoods Development, which is PDR. To the east is vacant property zone PDMU, and then to the west is a little bit of property on the southwest corner that's zoned A, and then the rest is the PDR Eagle Point Development. Okay, so on the site, up on the northwest extent of the, right where the Spine Road meets up with Moccasin Wallow, that's the one of the 2 commercial sites. The other one is in the southwest corner. It's kind of a elongated runs north-south on the west side of the road. And then the third parcel, it's actually referred to as parcel 1, is going to be limited to professional office only or uses that are not subject to commercial locational criteria, since it's kind of out there in the corner. But the other two are allowed to do commercial retail uses. The site plan shows two access points on Moccasin Wallow Road. It shows 2 access points on Buckeye Road. And of course, these are all, because it's a GDP, it's kind of arrows indicating where they will be established, and they're obviously subject to a little shifting depending on whether they have to align with other roads. 5 access points on Sawgrass Road, which is the spine road running through the middle of the project. 2 access points on FF Road, future road FF. And then, again, the 3 out parcels for non-residential development. I've pointed those out already. The specific approval was explained adequately, I think, by the applicant. The allowing a longer cul-de-sac in locations where they want to avoid impacting environmentally sensitive areas and wetlands specifically. So the positive aspects include that the large project will be developed as a planned community, which will result in integration of the mixed uses while ensuring compatibility. The project site has frontage along existing and planned thoroughfares, Buckeye Road, Sawgrass Road, Moccasin Wallow Road, and the future FF Road. And also the proposed PDMU zoning district will allow the board to approve stipulations as conditions of approval within the development to ensure compatibility. Also, the focal points will be provided along with proposed amenity centers that may include but not be limited to clubhouses, pools, and other passive outdoor facilities. Employment opportunities are provided with the proposed commercial activity nodes. Also, a variety of residential options are provided that help establish the trending pattern of growth in the area. And then finally, the project will be required to connect to public water and sanitary sewer. So negatives are, we have one that the residences adjacent to planned thoroughfares may experience potential negative impacts related to light, glare, noise, and pollution. But with our mitigating measures, the project exceeds the minimum open space requirements for mixed-use development. And also, I could add that, there will be requirements, the lighting ordinance and all those things will protect the citizens, along with land development code requirements at the time of designing and getting approval for the development. That will address a lot of the issues. And our conclusion is that the rezone to the PDMU with a GDP, as well as the specific approval and with stipulations, are all in compliance with both the comprehensive plan and the land development code. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I have no commissioners on the board. Commissioner Servia is on the board.
I just have one quick question, Dorothy. Great job. Will there be any agricultural uses continuing, on a portion of the property while some of it is developed, or will we not see that?
I'll have to see what the applicant says, that they didn't mention it at all or request. Usually if they request something like that, we do a stipulation.
And I didn't see the stipulation, and that's why I asked.
Right.
Because I don't want the applicant to be stuck and unable to do that.
Right.
If that were their desire. So,
Okay.
thank you.
I will let them answer that, I guess, at rebuttal.
Yeah, 1,000 acres.
Okay,
Any more questions?
thank you, ma'am. We don't have any other commissioners on the board for questions. We're going to move to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on this agenda item? All right, seeing no one, we'll close public comment. And are there any additional questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we'll go to applicant rebuttal.
Thank you, and thank you for your question, Commissioner Servia. I thought there was the approval to have short-term ag on. It is on there. It is in there. But I will tell you that we're really not planning on ag use going forward, but it's always good to have that short-term ag as a permitted use. I have nothing else. Thank you for your attention, and look forward to your vote.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Satcher, I am entertaining motions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll actually have Rosina read the approval of development motion.
Okay, perhaps Sarah, we'll have Sarah read it. She's ready to go. He would like you to read a motion for approval.
Yes, well, we haven't made any changes, stipulations. There'll be the alternative motion for approval on the staff report.
Commissioner?
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Satcher for approval.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Cruz is also on the board. Sir?
Yeah, I just want to say so people understand what we're looking at here. This is already approved for PDR, and what they're requesting is an adjustment to PDMU. I think all these big projects, ideally in a perfect world, will be PDMU. I mean, we end up with these situations where we just get this concentration of a massive amount of rooftops, and there's no walkability, there's no commercial, it puts more cars on the road to get to the stores, get to their employment bases. People coming in here saying, I will give up, I mean, let's look at this, it's 988 acres. They could build over 2,900 homes on this site as of right today, if they want to, but with zero retail, zero office space, anything. They're only building 1,900. They're giving up over 1,000 single-family homes here, which are very profitable right now, to put 200,000 square feet of space with a matrix, mind you, that requires minimum 50,000 retail, 50,000 office. So they're not just going to yank it out and only put one or only put the other. You know, even based on matrix, and I actually just pulled it while we were talking to get an apples to apples. I pulled the matrix for Artisan Lakes because that's right down the road in terms of what their trade-offs were for their DRI. They, in theory, by giving up these homes, would be able to build over 250,000 square feet, just using their numbers. I know it's not the same project. So they're building these less than 2 units per acre for the residential. They're building less square footage than maximum allowable. They're looking for additional open space and green space in an area where that's going to be appreciated by the community. And they're building a walkable, mixed-use community, which is going to be beneficial to the retail and the office. It's going to be beneficial to the residential. They're not coming in looking for anything more. In fact, they're coming in looking for less, but in a better planned community. I'm 100% on board with this, and I wish more people would come in with similar proposals to create more walkable, inclusive communities here in Manatee County.
Okay, thank you, sir. With no one else on the board, we'll move forward with the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Madam Clerk, it passes unanimously by a vote of 7-0. Mr. Paul, please introduce item number 10, advertised public hearing presentation scheduled.
Thank you, Chairman. Item number 10, under presentation scheduled, Z-21-15, GCFS LLC / Rye Road Rezone GCFS LLC is the owner. PLN 2111-0089, and it's quasi-judicial, and we have Kevin Oatman as our planner.
Thank you, ma'am. Rosina, is there anything you would like to add to the introduction?
From A, agriculture, general agriculture, to neighborhood commercial median, and the site is located north and the intersection of Golf Course and Rye Road.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. This is quasi-judicial, so commissioners, would anyone like to disclose any ex parte communication on item 10? Okay, hearing none. Who's here to represent the applicant?
Good morning again. This is Cameron Miller with ZNS Engineering. I'm a planner, and I have been sworn. So I'm here today to talk to you guys about an exciting opportunity along the Rye Road corridor that can provide a support use to the growing residential developments that are happening along Rye Road that can be a great support use. Here's the aerial map of the site. It's approximately 5.44 acres. As Rosina just explained, it's at the southwest corner of Golf Course Road, which has a 20-year classification as a 2-lane collector, and then Rye Road, which has a 20-year classification as a 4-lane arterial. Here's the future land use map. Obviously, very predominantly UF3, the NC-M district is allowed in this land use category. Here's the zoning map. As you can see, the PDR is beginning to expand further and further east into these A districts, these general agriculture districts, and A1 districts. So we believe in the future that this will be a great opportunity to have these residents within these communities have shorter trip times to a great neighborhood use. Touching again on the development trend, as you can see, there's Twin Rivers Phase 2, Rye Ranch, which is a previously approved project just in not too long ago, and the Foxbrook as well. We did have a neighborhood meeting on January 20th of 2022, and following slide is a couple of questions and comments that the public had. One question was the hours of operations. This is the Child's Hospitality Group that is acquiring this site. They have general hours of operations from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Sunday, and these hours could vary, but this is the general outline for most of their properties. Lighting, there was a lighting concern. The client is familiar with lighting regulations of Manatee County and will design their project to avoid any adverse impacts to surrounding neighbors. One was outdoor seating and entertainment. Outdoor seating and entertainment is proposed for this project, even though we don't have a concept fully fleshed out yet. With the effect of COVID-19, it's pretty obvious to see how outdoor seating and entertainment is very valuable for restaurant operations such as the Child's Hospitality Group. Other one was traffic exiting Rye Road. We expect the improvements to Rye Road in the future to help with any traffic related concerns. So quick brief overview of who is Child's Hospitality. As I'm sure many of you are aware of who they are, run by Ed Childs. Began in 1979 with the Sandbar. Today they have 3 restaurants, 4 event locations, 1 farm as Gamble Creek Farm. Some of their restaurants include Mar Vista, the Sandbar, and the Beach House. Childs Group is not, a chain restaurant. It's not an outside developer looking to put in, a common chain restaurant. This is a company that cares about the community and has, specific core values such as sustainability, local ingredients, seasonal methods, things of that nature to have a good impact on their local environment and their community as a whole. Here are some of their local vendors and partners that they have within the community. Dakin Dairy out in Mayaca, Blackbeard's Ranch, also in Mayaca, and Four Daughters Farms right there in Parrish. Some of their partners in the community include All Clams on Deck and 1% of the Planet, and several other partners that they work with in the community, bettering the environment, sustainable methods, things of that nature. So in conclusion, I think this is a great opportunity for the surrounding residents to have a good, clean, local business that can reduce traffic and travel to different restaurants, reduce their travel times. I think the closest restaurant might be at the corner of Moccasin Wallow and 301. So I think it's a great opportunity. We are limited to an FAR of 30,000 square feet, and we also have 2 setback requirements, 25-foot setbacks on Golf Course Road and Rye Road. So thank you guys for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Whitmore has questions for you, sir.
Yeah, I know Ed and I went out there and met a few years ago with the parish people and trying to figure out if that, when that area would be able to do something like what's being proposed. So at first I know he was looking at parish, but, he's gone more further out east. So I think it's a good opportunity because I don't know about all you guys, but all I hear is something like this is needed out there besides the fast food places. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I don't have anyone else on the board. We'll go to staff presentation. There he is.
Smiling after he's jogged 20 miles, probably.
I know, he's the happiest guy. Kevin, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I like the new renovation, but I think it could be a little bit shorter for me. All right, good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable Board members. My name is Kevin Oatman. I'm with Development Services, and I've been sworn. I've been a 31-year resident for District 4, and I'm proud to be from here. So thank you. Cam pretty much introduced the project, and he summarized most of the facets that are important to this project, so I don't want to go over that. It's been a long morning. The one thing I did want to point out is back in the planning, on the Planning Commission meeting last month, we did have one individual who was looking at this as a rezone. So we weren't looking at it in the aspect that this was going to be proposed for a restaurant. We were concerned about the different uses that the NCM zoning would allow. Let me go ahead and quickly go through there. Again, I'm just trying to adjust with this new display. Okay, here. And these are just the limited uses that are allowed in this area. Most of them are sufficient or valuable to those residents nearby. The two adjacent parcels to the south as well as to the west are residential. And of course, at what Cam had just said, we have implemented certain extra setbacks to accommodate to those residential parcels. But again, because this is just neighborhood commercial, there is limited use for that commercial. So it's not as if they could come in with a whole big different proposal for something huge that may be impacted by the residents in the area. So other than that, I just will want to wrap that up, that everything seems to appear to meet the LDC and the comprehensive code. And I thank you for this time. You have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Servia is on the board before you go anywhere, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin, thank you very much. And the Childs Group does such a great job. I think everybody is happy that they would be coming there. But just for the record, would this zoning allow other restaurateurs to go there?
It will.
It
Yes,
will.
ma'am.
Yes.
It will.
Okay.
And again, it's going to favor to those neighborhood commercial services such as small retail, restaurants, convenience stores. However, with those convenience stores that would cater to those residents would need a special permit. But again, those small type commercial services will be beneficial for those residents nearby.
So I'm so glad that there was a neighborhood meeting held. Do you feel like the neighbors were satisfied with what they heard at the neighborhood meeting? Because I saw the list of concerns, but it didn't really tell me, was everybody satisfied with the discussion?
I believe they were, once they realized that they had somewhat of a proposed for the restaurant, and then Cam and them were able to provide them some of those restrictions that would be in place because of their concerns with the outdoor seating as well as the hours. And of course, at final site plan, when they do bring into a project that has specific for those things, the LDC and the comprehensive codes have those rules and regulations to help accommodate those things that may impact those residents around them.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well done, sir. Thank you. We're going to open this up to public comment since there are no other commissioners on the board. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on this specific agenda item? We're on item number 10. Seeing no one, we will not go to the phone. We'll close public comment because it's quasi-judicial. So we'll close public comment. Applicant rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to add about the neighborhood meeting. I wasn't here during the time. I'm actually just 4 months into being a Manatee County resident with ZNS. I did talk to Rachel, who held the neighborhood meeting, and much to what Kevin said, knowing about who the Childs Group is, explaining to the public on what they do, their practices, a lot of concerns and questions were really met. I think a lot of people were concerned about, gas pumps and, possibly more intense uses. And we were describing to them that would have to go through some of those, such as a gas pump, would have to go through a special permit use and things of that measures for approval. So just wanted to add that little piece in there. Thanks for your time.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not a question. I just wanted to request to be able to make the motion. And it's surprising that John Horn didn't beat him on this one, as he's building all over. But
We're entertaining-
Tiles put his name on it. He's very hands-on with the neighbors, and I think they'll be happy with it. It's not a chain, so.
We're entertaining motions if you want to have Ms. Shank read the proposed motion for approval or denial, whatever you're after.
Yes, it would simply be the move to adopt the ordinance as per the motion for approval in the staff report.
Second.
That motion, thank you.
So moved. So we have a motion by Commissioner Whitmore and a second by Commissioner Satcher for approval. We have held public comment. There are no commissioners on the board. We'll move forward with the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Madam Clerk, it passes unanimously by a vote of 7-0. I am going to jump ahead because it's 11:34 and I don't foresee us, we'll see how number 12 goes as to whether we take up 11 before or after lunch. So let's jump ahead to number 12. Mrs. DePaul, if you would please read number 12 into the record.
Number 12 is Resolution R-22-006 and R-22-005. It's an appeal of an administrative determination, AD-21-31. This is legislative, and unfortunately, we're having Marshall Robinson here. He had to leave for an emergency.
Oh, no.
So I may ask Racina to step in on this one.
Oh, that's too bad. Hope
It's just a
It's a
continuance.
continuance, it
But
is.
just if we need anything, Marshall won't be here,
We've
so
had
just
our
Racina.
briefings.
Yeah, she just wasn't aware. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I could jump in with Rosina's indulgence. This matter has been continued a number of times, and we realize that. However, Mr. Wenzel had mentioned to me that there is a study that the applicant submitted regarding adverse off-site impacts, which is very relevant to the decision on the appeal, and the study's being currently reviewed by the county consultant. So we're not ready to hear the appeal because there's additional information being reviewed, and the applicant is in the process of doing some other matters, and they've requested either a 90-day or 120-day continuance. I think the 90-day continuance would keep it on our radar or less. So I would suggest the motion continues for 90 days, or if you want to do 60 days, I'm okay with that too.
The order of the board is Servia and Cruz. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you. And this has been something that's been ongoing for a long, long time, a couple of years. And I just want to bring to the board's attention that there are neighbors who are struggling and suffering every day with the operation that's going on there. This appeal is a little bit different from many of the violations on the site, and the attorney is recommending that we grant the appeal. I would be in favor of a 90-day extension and
Not grant the appeal,
I'm
the
sorry,
continuance.
a continuance of the appeal, excuse me. And I would be in favor of 90 days and make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion for a 90-day continuance by Commissioner Servia, and it was seconded by Commissioner Cruz, and he has the floor now.
I was just going on the floor to make a motion, so I don't need it.
And it's done.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just read the date in the record so we're clear. So the motion for continuance to 90 days says, I move to continue the public hearing for Resolution 22006 and R 22005 to November 3rd, 2022 at 9:00 a.m. or soon thereafter as may be heard at the Miami County Government Administration Building, et cetera, period.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We'll open this up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on item number 12? Seeing no one, we'll go to the phone. Is anyone called in to speak on item number 12? All right, we're going to close public comment. We'll hold the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Madam Clerk, all opposed? Madam Clerk, it passes unanimously by a vote of 7-0. So it's 11:37, Commissioners. We have one item left. It'll probably take a little while. You want to do a 10-minute recess and then go ahead and take it up?
Why don't we do it now?
You want to just bulldog through it?
And then we're
Okay.
done for the day.
And we would be done for the day. I just
Is that
foresee it
okay,
taking a while.
Vicki?
I just foresee it taking a while, and I didn't know if.
Do?
You think this takes a while?
Okay, we'll.
I don't think it's going to take a while.
Mrs. DePaul, would you please read item number 11 into the record?
Absolutely. Last but not least, number 11, it's a resolution, appeal of administrative determination AD-22-14. And we've got Loretta Merrill here.
Rosina, do you need to add anything to the introduction.
There are two resolutions. Resolution R 22-137 is to deny the appeal, and Resolution 22-138 is to granting the appeal.
Okay, Mr. Chair, since this is an appeal, I believe we should hear from the applicant first, and then staff, and followed by, the county attorney's office has some comments as well.
Who's here representing the applicant?
Ed Vogler, representing the applicant.
Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an appeal of an administrative determination that was made by your professional staff. I want to say it's a very important matter. By the way, the filing fee to initiate an appeal is $5,000.
Whoa.
So it's not insignificant, and one decides to appeal a decision like this only when one needs to. And this is one of those events. For the record, sir, I have an index of exhibits that I'd like to share, although they will not all be discussed in our presentation. We have a PowerPoint. And I have one for the clerk, and then
Go ahead, sir. Share what you like. It's your $5,000.
yeah. Well, I wanted you to know the significance of it. I suppose, you know, every once in a while we disagree with the staff, but taking an appeal is a big deal. So this is our notice of appeal, and the people that are with me today are Mike Emmons. He's one of the owners. Alan McIntyre, who I think you know from other engagements, works with the ownership group. Chris Fisher with Clearwater Land Design, and Alec Hoffner with Kimley Horn and Associates. So we have a very, very fine technical team, and this is something that's important to the consideration. We filed the notice of appeal. It relates to one parcel of land specifically, but there are a total of 16 that are affected by the same interpretation. So if you make an interpretation that applies to this one, it will apply to all, even though the specific appeal is only as to that one. I think there's general agreement on that point. So I'll go forward and just locate the property. You can see this is in eastern Manatee County off of State Road 64. And there's a little bit closer identification for the property. In about 2003, this is what the property looked like. It was completely uplands. It was a grove, for the most part, and some pasture land. And that's the property as it existed in 2003. The owner of the property at that time was an aggregate company. And so they went to SwiftMud, and they obtained a borrow permit to build a borrow permit, and that's permitted by SwiftMud. And of course, what they do essentially is excavate the land and sell the aggregates. And at the end of that period of time, as you can see, this is about halfway through 2012, they're excavating the land and essentially building a lake, which is what the water regenerates into the groundwater regenerates into the pit. And so this is what it looks like today. And so that's, one could argue, an aggregate reclamation, but that isn't really the question here today. So historically, this is a very important slide. Historically, the property owners at this land, the aggregate company and their predecessors, identified a configuration of 18 parcels. And you can see that overlaid here, and essentially, when you see the word PID, that's the representation from the property appraiser's office. So each of these were separate tax parcels, all in excess of 5 acres, because that's the requirement in this zoning district. So along come these owners, and they say, well, we want to reimagine the 18 parcels and configure them differently. And so they've created this plan. And this is a 16 parcel plan. And so, you know, their general thinking was you had 18, you're going to go to 16. It shouldn't be that difficult of an arrangement. And so starting in July of 2021, they started to engage the staff in asking questions about this. And I just want to say, from my standpoint, this is one of the most confusing areas of the code, you know. And I submit that East County, we need to work on these codes. They need to be written a little tighter and a little better. And I guess this is sort of the theme of the day, maybe for me. But those are important things. Internal consistency in the land development code, so we all sort of know the rules. Not only your staff, but the applicants and the landowners and so forth. So in July of 2021, upon an inquiry from the landowner, the staff indicated that 5-acre lots or larger may move lot lines through the property appraiser's office with their split combine form. So the advice was, you got 18 parcels, you can convert them into 16, you do that through the property appraiser, not through a subdivision at the planning department. And so then a month later or so, as plans and communications have been corresponded back and forth, again, the question of subdivision was identified. The staff wrote to us and said, doing it this way, he would not need to subdivide with a minor subdivision. Therefore, this can be done with the property appraiser's office by moving some of the lot lines and combining some of the lots. A subdivision procedure is not necessary. So the question of subdivision was being discussed. But at this point in time, the most important part of this is, how do you treat the borrow pit under land development code? And so these questions were being asked by the engineers and by others. And in this particular response, August 25, 2021, the quote is, quote, per the following LDC definition, the area within the water can be included in the lot acreage, close quote. So this was a great relief to these folks, and they wanted to continue to divide and sell the properties on the 16-lot basis through the procedure at the property appraiser's office. But before they went forward and closed the sale of any of these parcels, they wanted to make double dog certain that this was correct. So they went back to the staff, and on September 3, so a week or 10 days later, you'll see that we attached the most recent site plan prepared by engineer Chris Fisher, who's copied on this email, and we are confident that this complies with the current agricultural zoning regulations. As you know, this land does not require a plat process, that's the subdivision question, and we will be accomplishing our new lot layout through the property appraiser's office. Can you confirm that there are no issues, concerns, problems with our current site plan? So the very diligent staff writes back on that day with some questions. And they ask, these are good questions, and they're looking at the lots and they ask something about lot width. So is there sufficient lot width on several of these parcels? Because it's got to be 200 feet. And the other question, important question, are there any wetlands on the property? Because there are provisions that deal specifically with wetlands and how many you can have on a 5-acre parcel and so forth. So these questions were being asked, and the point I'm making about it is there is an interactive process that was ongoing between landowner and professional staff. And so then the next thing that happened was, I think I skipped ahead. Yes, then there was an answer to these questions where we showed the plan, the width, and confirmed that there were no wetlands on the property. Well, there's the question. There's the answer. It's a little hard. I'm practically blind anyway, so I'm wondering how you're going to get a monitor up here.
We're not. We're going
You're
to
not?
change it.
Is this how it's going to be?
Let's hope not. I hope they put it back.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, I mean, I heard that. We were going to bring your own laptop. That would be dangerous. But anyway, back to the answer. September 3. It looks good. Everything appears to meet the land development code standards. That's what we expected the answer to be. We were gratified to get that answer. We were very pleased to get that answer. and that was September 3. So the next document is representative only. This is a special warranty deed. You can see that it is October 11. It is recorded in the public records. And what this reflects is the sale of one of these parcels to an independent third-party buyer that wants to build a home. And so there are 14 of these. We don't have every copy of every deed, but they're in our index and our exhibits that we've submitted for the record. So there were 14 sales that were made over the next several months period of time. And those are all third-party buyers. They're citizens of our community. Several of them have applied for a building permit. And of course, what's happened now with the administrative determination in May, so May of this year, after all these closings occurred, there was another review by staff, and the administrative determination says no, these are not buildable parcels. And the rationale is because the borrow pit is water, and the land under the borrow pit cannot count for the 5 acres. Now, interestingly, prior to 1998, that was very clear that it only had to be a 1-acre upland piece. Very clear. I have no idea if it changed, why it changed, and we argue that it didn't really change. And so we had to file this notice of appeal. And as I mentioned to you, it's on behalf of one parcel because that's what the AD was for. But it applies to all of those 14 people and the other 2 lots that haven't been sold yet. Of course, we stopped selling the lots until this is resolved. But we have another burden, which is to explain to our customers why we felt confident that we met the code, and I've tried to go through that because we're told, and why we sold them the property because we believed it complied with the codes and ordinances. And we were surprised by the administrative determination, and of course, even prior to my involvement, there was a lot of discussion with staff and landowners, and the only option that we then have at that point in time is to appeal it. And so we did that. Of course, here's a notice of appeal, and I know it's in your books, and I'm sure you've probably read it. This is in an appeal, this is our appellate brief. It's not that brief, but what we try to do is identify the key facts and the key law so that when you're acting like an appellate judge, you have the information before you and you make a decision. Essentially, when you boil it down, our argument, our legal argument, what we really say is that the Land Development Code as written doesn't regulate this. It doesn't regulate a borrow pit. The definition, the word borrow pit is not in the Land Development Code. It's just not. It's just not regulated. This was a swift mud permitted scenario. And the provision of the code that really does apply is the definition of shoreline. Now this is on the second page, the second full paragraph of our letter. Shoreline means the interface of the land and water in oceanic and estuarine conditions. Oceanic and estuarine conditions. That's not a borrow pit. That's not a stormwater pond. You're going to hear testimony, I believe, from another interested party that is dealing with this issue for a stormwater pond for one of the projects. Happens to be in the Oak Communities, so I'm pretty familiar with the issue. So our basic position is, simply stated, that the definition of shoreline and other language was not written to apply to an artificial water body. And even though there are lots and lots of definitions in state law and other criteria and so forth, we're not permitted as a county to use out of code beyond the LDC provisions to regulate land in our community. And of course, what our essential argument is that the original interpretation made by staff in July and September of 2021 was correct. It was correct. And the later determination made in May was a little bit overly formulistic and unnecessary, but most importantly, in our view, and we argue this is an appeal, not supported by the Land Development Code. And so under those circumstances, We relied, I think, fairly on the interpretations that were made. We think those interpretations were correct. We think that the current interpretation is incorrect, and there's no code provision and there's no policy requirement that requires it. I think you'll hear testimony from some folks that largely the health department, if you have a buildable parcel in East County, you have to have about a half acre for a well and a septic system. If you're in a special water protection area, like a most impacted area or something like that, the health department rules will expand that from a half acre to an acre, but not 5 acres of uplands. So all of these parcels, and we put it into our letter, we showed how many acres are inside the borrow pit and how many acres are outside. But they're all, I mean, they're well over 2+ acres, right? At even the smallest upland piece. But you can see that they're well over a half acre and certainly well over 1 acre. And prior to some change that was made after 1998, that 1 acre was removed for some reason unknown to me. So I don't think there's a policy reason for this. And I'd like you to hear from the affected parties. We have a very good team. So the engineer is next, and then the landowner is next, and the engineers, and you'll hear the whole story.
It is constitutional. Are you sure? This is constitutional.
I think I might be too short for this, too. Good morning, or good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Alan McIntyre. Thank you, Ed, for the overview of this issue that we're dealing with. I'm the VP of Acquisition and Development for the company. I served as the applicant and the agent for the company on this project, and as Ed indicated, we have a cordial and respectful relationship with the county. We work closely with our planning, engineering, and surveying consultants, as well as the county staff, to identify and communicate our plans and objectives, and to make sure that our plan to sell acreage complied with all codes and ordinances. We answered every question presented, provided drawings and historical information, and we were very gratified to obtain the written confirmation of compliance from 2 of the planners reviewing our proposal. We then proceeded to sell and close 14 of the properties to third parties who want to build their homes there. We were surprised and shocked to receive notice that other county staff felt that the land was not compliant. We had several recent meetings, and following the tone of those meetings, we expected that the matter would be resolved administratively. Obviously, this did not occur, and we're hopeful to obtain your support to remedy this unfortunate circumstance. Thank you very much.
My name is Chris Fisher, and I'm a professional engineer with Clearview Land Design in Tampa, Florida. We have planned and permitted thousands of lots in Manatee County and are very familiar with the codes and ordinances of the county. We were retained to evaluate whether a 5-acre lot in the configuration plan was compliant with the LDC, and we concluded that it was. In my professional opinion, having reviewed the specific language of the LDC, that the 16-lot configuration is in compliance, and each of the 16 lots constitute a buildable lot under the LDC, as well as what Ed was talking about from an engineering perspective, with the upland being at least a half acre to facilitate well and septic, or 1 acre if it was in an area of the most impacted. Thank you.
Sir, have you been sworn?
I have not.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
You didn't say you'd been sworn at the beginning. I assumed you had.
I apologize.
What do you want to do with this? What do you want to do now? You already testified.
You'll have to adopt it by reference.
You want me to let you handle that?
Yeah.
I do.
So, sir, can
Do I need to
you
reread it?
just adopt by reference what you just said?
Say that one more
Can
time.
you just adopt by reference what you just said?
Sure. Chris Fisher with Clearview Land Design, Tampa, Florida. We have planned and permitted about 1,000 lots, or excuse me, thousands of lots in Manatee County. I'm very familiar with the codes and ordinances.
She's just saying you have to adopt and say, I adopt what I said.
Oh, I apologize. I adopt what I said earlier.
Previous statement.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it was good, but I didn't want to hear it again. Sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Alec Hoffner with Kimley Horn, and I have been sworn. So my job today is to talk to y'all about the jurisdictional status of this water body that's contained on the parcel. It is a borrow pit, as Ed described it. I've looked back at the Swift Mud permit that was issued, and this borrow pit is a permitted surface water management system. And as such, it's regulated very differently than a wetland or another natural water body. So in my opinion, the area, the shoreline, I guess the edge of this borrow pit is not a shoreline as defined in the LDC, which I think is a very important distinction based on Ed's arguments in this matter. So that's what I have to say today. I guess I'll pass it back on to Ed.
I'm sworn in.
State
First
your
and foremost,
name and county of residence for the record.
Yep, Michael Emmons, Sarasota County. First and foremost, wanted to thank everyone for taking their time out of their day to hear this appeal and address this issue. Like I said, my name is Michael Emmons, and I'm one of the principals of this project. While our company primarily develops property out of the state, having been raised in Manatee County and having our corporate office in Lakewood Ranch, we often keep an eye out for properties in this area that fit our model. On the day I drove by this particular property, I was immediately struck by not only the great location, but also the unbelievable beauty of the land. A week later, we were under contract and very excited about working through the details and figuring out this project. At that point, we retained a very skilled consulting team, including experienced planners, engineers, environmental consultants, and surveyors to advise us and confirm proper compliance was met. These professionals are not new to Manatee County and are very skilled. We tried to do everything correctly and now find ourselves, and even more concerning, our valued customers in a very difficult position. As you know from the testimony, we have completed the sale of 14 of the 16 parcels, and our customers are anxiously looking to us to obtain a reconfirmation of the original opinion as was provided at the beginning of this process. Their goal is to build their dream home out on these properties and become constituents of this great county. We hope that you can provide all parties involved with a remedy of this very unfortunate circumstance, and I once again thank you for your time and consideration on this matter.
Thank you, sir. Ed, you have 3 commissioners on the board.
And Mr. Chairman, that completes our presentation, but please ask us any questions that are on your minds that are important to a decision.
Cruz, Servia, then Whitmore. Commissioner Cruz.
I don't really have any questions on this. I put myself on the board at first just to move things along, but I didn't know it was quasi, so I can't do anything other than ask questions.
I will come back to you when I'm entertaining motions, sir.
Okay.
Servia.
I have a couple of questions, Ed, please. So at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about, I think, 18 lots that were there. Was that part of a platted subdivision? Were they recognized in any way formally, those lots?
They were recognized by the property appraiser's office through a data processing number, a DIP number. And this is one of the strategies that landowners have employed over the years to, when a minor subdivision is not required, if you allow the parcels to become one parcel, then they're one parcel rather than individual parcels. And this is a strategy that applies to a lot of land in this zoning district, and you'll see it.
Yeah, I understand that, and I've seen that my whole career, that you can split up property any way that you would like to split it up and record it with a property appraiser. But it is this authority at the Building and Development Services Department now, or Development Services, that would say, oh, that was legally subdivided, or, hey, there's a problem with the way these lots are configured. But that discussion never happened. Is that correct?
Not in 2021, and it didn't happen prior to the time that we sold the lots.
Okay.
Sadly, it happened after.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all, and you've been in this business a very long time, and you're a very smart attorney, and you understand that, yes. So there are reasons that you go through a formal process to make sure that the lots comply with the Land Development Code. So I agree on LDC Section 401.3.C.3. It's not shoreline, it's not a wetland. That's clear. My question is about lot area. So can you tell us that when you read the definition of lot area, which excludes any water body, does it meet the definition and give you the 5-acre minimum required by the zoning district?
That's not how we read it, because there are probably 5 or 6 different pieces of the code that deal with this subject matter, and they're not internally consistent. So when it was read the first time by staff, I might not add, not me, there's a language that says except as may be permitted in the general agricultural district. So there's sort of a carve out for the A district. This is in the definition of lot area in the second line. And so, I mean, Commissioner Servia, I think that I said this is one of the most confusing areas because people ask me for opinions, and I'm like, I have no idea what this says. The county should rewrite these codes. And I always thought it was 1 acre. And then I learned in 1998 or later it changed. And I don't know why it changed. But the real question is whether borrow pit constitutes a shoreline. Because you're going to find, I think the county attorney may have some comments on this, but I think when you get to looking at the definition of shoreline, the edge of a borrow pit is not a regulated shoreline.
So I agree, a borrow pit's not a shoreline. Totally agree with you. But let me ask you this. Is a borrow pit a water body?
It clearly a body of water. The question I would have, is it a regulated body of water that precludes you from using it to satisfy lot area requirements in an A zoning district?
So I'll just read the first sentence. Lot area shall mean the total horizontal area within the legal lines of a lot, excluding streams, ponds, canals, rivers, creeks, or other water bodies, as may be permitted in the general agricultural district. So borrow pits are permitted in the general agricultural district, but it very clearly excludes them when you're measuring lot area from. I
don't think it very clearly excludes them, Commissioner, and neither did the staff in 2021. And at the risk of arguing a little, there is a definition of water body, and it concludes by saying it must have a discernible shoreline. Now, you and I were just in an agreement that this isn't a shoreline. Now, if you want to parse the word discernible, I mean, I've read this a zillion times, okay? And I'm visualizing myself making this argument. I say, well, am I going to say this is not a shoreline? Well, it's the way I've used the words. I said it's, you know, what did I say? It's the connectivity of the water to the borrow pit. I mean, it's not a regulated shoreline, and therefore it's excluded from the definition of water body. But when you ask me, is it a water body? I go, I mean, looks like water.
I have the greatest respect for you. You know I do, and the best attorney in the room. So, water body shall mean water.
Best privately
best private attorney.
Employed
best
attorney in the room.
Let's
And there's
be
no
very
one
clear.
else.
So the definition of water body shall mean any natural or artificial pond, lake, reservoir, or other area which ordinarily or intermittently contains water. Or, did it meet that first part? Shall mean any natural or artificial pond, lake, reservoir, or other area which ordinarily or intermittently contains water. Or has a shoreline.
So, you know, what I would say to you is, you read it that way, I can read it that way, the staff can read it a different way in 2021, and they can read it today a different way. And this is fundamentally the problem. But what do you do when you're a landowner and you want to ask these questions and you retain a good team and you get the answer you want? What do you do?
Mr. Vogler, you and I have been doing this a very long time, and you and I both know that when you ask a question at the zoning counter or over the phone or by sending a quick email, you know, everyone does their very best to tell you what the rules are, but that is not legally defensible. It is not, it just isn't. I mean, you and I both know that. Look, I want to hear from the staff. What's the difference? I don't want to take somebody through a process that is unnecessary. Why do we care about this, staff? I want you to come and tell us, please.
All right, one final comment, if you don't mind, very briefly. You know, at the end of the day, the only place that these 14 residents can come is to their Board of County Commissioners. It's the only place. So we're not having an esoteric intellectual argument. We're asking, praying for relief. And you're the only one that can give it to us.
Okay. Kevin?
Okay. Commissioner Whitmore, then Satcher.
I know Sylvia is the expert, but I don't agree. To me, a borrow pit is a borrow pit. I know Lakewood Ranch has them. They have them all over the county. They're usually for digging aggregate or whatever else. It's not, to me, it's even a temporary use. I think maybe Lakewood Ranch may be closing theirs, or they have. So, and it filled with water. Well, just like Piney Point, filled with 4.5 million and all these rainfalls. I kind of remember, I know some people don't like it that maybe I've been up here, but I do remember the wood, what is it called? Woody Roo? Wood, you know what I'm talking about, the bar? River Roo, okay, River Roo. And there was a property east of this that kind of, we had the same thing where staff didn't agree because it was in they counted a certain part of the parcel for the uplands in the water. But anyway, we disagreed with them. This kind of reminded me of this. You know, I came in thinking another way because I had staff briefing, but I'm glad you brought this up. And unfortunately, and I know this happens, they were given information almost all the way through until a few months back that it was buildable lot, and they sold. So I don't interpret a borrow pit as a waterway. It was dug to build roads and stuff like that.
This is questions for applicant, though.
No, that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Well, he can come up and say if he agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I know. Okay.
Commissioner Satcher, you're next on the board for questions for the applicant, then Commissioner Baugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually am going to hold off until deliberations.
Okay.
Apologize.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Baugh.
This is a very titchy situation. I still think you're one of the best attorneys, even though you're the only one here right now. But anyway.
You mean private attorney?
Well, besides Sarah, I mean, she's up on she's on the dais. Sorry, Sarah, but in that instance, you don't count, because I think you're the best on the dais. However, it seems to me, and my question is, obviously the county's made a mistake. One way or the other, we made a mistake. The county did. We either made it in 21, in September 3rd, I think it was,
98.
or, we've done it since. Whichever the case is, this is going to happen. It does happen on occasion. It's one of those things. But my question is, do we ever use a grandfather clause when the citizens took our word and did something that, it is not, what we're saying now is not appropriate? I'm just curious as to why we don't do a grandfather's clause, since it was our mistake to begin with. We're the one that's caused this situation. So that's just a question. Maybe my other best attorney up here, Sarah Shank, can answer it. I think it should have had a grandfather's clause.
Special exception.
I can't, there is a process for a non-conforming lot,
Non-conforming.
but staff might address that when they make their presentation
Yeah.
in more detail.
Why don't we move on to staff presentation? That might help hopefully clear things up for a lot of us. Who's here to present for staff?
Yes, there you go.
There he is.
Another great representative.
Look at his face.
Everybody's great today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
You're all winners
that.
today. Okay.
I just wanted to give a brief introduction. You see the letter, the administrative determination, and you all make excellent points. Ed has made excellent points that I don't disagree with. The code has changed in the last 20 years with regard to agricultural lots. This came in as an administrative determination for a single lot. On the first rendition of the administrative determination, this is just a brief history of how we had to address this particular letter. We discovered that a survey was provided that was not even 5 acres. We revised the letter, we made some corrections, and based on those corrections, there was discovery, there was research. We looked at what was going on and found out that there were other lots carved out from the original, I think Ed said 18. So we learned a lot in between, I guess it was February and April, of what actually happened out here. There's been staff turnover. There are technical staff that answers the phone that do give answers to certain questions. Had the administrative determination been done back then in September or July of '21, they would have gotten the findings that you see in this letter today. I guarantee you that. So based on that, I will say that I do not disagree with all of Ed's points. Our definitions hogtie us into the determination that we made. The definitions are clear. And we actually had conversations with Natural Resources. Gary Race is here. He agrees on what this is. This is a water body, and this is a shoreline based on the definitions in our code today. Again, those have changed over the last 20 years. I believe Commissioner Serby and I go to the same planning schools and have the same interpretation of what this actually is. Yes, it was once a borrow pit. Today it is a water body based on the definition of our code. So with that, Loretta has a short presentation. She was integral in putting together the determination, and I'm going to let her go ahead and give a presentation, short one.
Good afternoon. Loretta Merrill, staff. I have been sworn. All right, so this is the property in question. I give you an overview of the property, where it is, zoomed in on the previous lot configuration, which was 4.57 acres, and the new survey, which is 5.323 acres. The background and administrative determination was requested in March of '22 for this parcel on Wauchula Road in Myakka City, Manatee County. The property is zoned A, general agricultural, with a future land use of AGR, agriculture rural. They expressed a desire to build a single-family home on the property and requested confirmation of minimum water setbacks with a building permit pending. It was determined that the lot does not meet minimum lot standards for construction of a single-family home, and AD 2214 was issued indicating such. Here's the future land use, the zoning. LDC Section 401.4, Table 4.5, Schedule of Bulk and Dimensional Standards, states that the minimum lot area for single-family detached home on A zoning is 5 acres. The minimum lot size cannot include wetlands unless the standards of 401(3)(c)(3) are met. Now I'll go into some definitions. Lot area shall mean the total horizontal area within the legal lines of a lot, excluding streams, ponds, canals, rivers, creeks, or water bodies, except as may be permitted in the general agricultural district. Now, that last phrase I interpret as meaning referencing 401(3)(c)(3) wetlands, not water bodies. Shoreline shall mean the interface of land and water in oceanic and estuarine conditions, which follows the general configuration of mean high water line and ordinary high water mark. The term shall include shorelines of lakes, streams, and rivers. Now, water body, which we believe this is, shall mean any natural or artificial pond, lake, reservoir, or other area which ordinarily or intermittently contains water or which has a discernible shoreline. Section 401(3)(c)(3), which I reference, discusses waterfront lots and wetlands. We do not contend that this is a wetland. We contend that it is a water body. So based upon review of the provided information against the LDC, staff determined that this former borrow pit meets the definition of a water body. As such, the portion of this lot that is under the water body cannot be included in the calculation of the lot area. Therefore, this parcel does not meet the minimum requirement of 5 acres for the construction of a single-family home on this A-zone lot. That concludes my presentation.
Did you want to make a comment, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. Then it's Serbia and DePaul, and then Bellamy.
well, if the questions are for staff, I can wait.
I don't know if you want to make a statement before we start with questions.
Okay, I'll just,
Okay. We usually like to hear from the attorney before we do anything.
Okay, I don't want to take anyone's time away. Basically, I did spend a substantial amount of time talking individually with each staff member who spoke, as well as others who haven't spoken, who are here today. And I did carefully review all of the definitions of the LDC. When we look at these code interpretations, we look at the LDC and the comprehensive plan. When the terms are defined, we don't look to the county code, the Florida statute, the Florida Administrative Code, or other sources that staff has referred me to, which can be construed to support staff's opinion. The issue is we have to look at all LDC definitions very closely. And the reason I'm being extra conservative here is that the county did lose an appellate court case involving an interpretation by a former administrator of Development Services. And this was the Second District Court of Appeal case. It's binding on all circuit courts, and it will count against the county if we're interpreting a vague definition or vague regulations. Basically, the court will err in the side of the applicants. That's basically how it's going to be. And looking at that, we've heard testimony on both sides that these definitions are confusing at best, ambiguous at worst. And so taking everything in the totality and being fully cognizant of staff's opinions, the county attorney's office is concerned that we will face liability in taking claims or otherwise if we don't just fish a cup bait, just rule in favor of the applicant and amend the code to say what you want it to say. If you don't want to count the water bodies, let's make it clear. If you want to count them in lot area for ag zoning, make it clear. That's all I'm asking is clarity. And that's my recommendation.
That's fair. Commissioner Servia, then DePaul and Whitmore.
Yeah, and I always like to hear from the attorneys. I like to follow legal advice. How many of these lots are problematic, other than this one?
I didn't count, but I believe it's approximately 10 of the 16.
So most of the lots,
All but two.
under your interpretation, don't meet the minimum lot area, under your interpretation.
Correct.
Is there a danger to the health, safety, or welfare of the public if we were to rule with the applicant?
I don't believe I can answer that question.
You can't answer that. He can.
I would say no.
Right, thank you.
And Commissioner Serbia, I questioned additional staff on that same question in terms of flooding. I talked to Mr. Gerstenberger. I talked to others. I didn't hear any danger, otherwise I would, based on my knowledge, I would have mentioned it.
Okay, so I will just say, because I wear a different hat and I've done this type of work for a long time, to me, it doesn't seem that confusing, but because it's confusing to many other people, and based on the legal advice from our attorney, I am going to side with the applicant, and there's no danger to the health, safety, welfare. But in the recommendation to clear up the land development code so it's clear in all instances, I kind of chuckle inside because that's why we have professional planners, because you can never make it clear in every situation. That's why we have attorneys. We have to interpret these things based on policy direction of the past and what makes sense for the protection of the public health, safety, welfare. So those are my comments.
Commissioner Serbia, I might have agreed with you before the Second District Court of Appeal ruled, but as an attorney, I have to caution you, if we just base interpretations of what happened 20 years ago, because the planner has been, not you personally, but the planner has been here 20 years and we know verbal law, we can't do that anymore. We have to codify the past practices in the code.
Okay.
Yes, good luck to our staff in doing that. I'll be supporting the attorney's advice. Thank you.
Okay, so DePaul, Whitmore, and Satcher.
I just wanted to make a statement. This one was really hard, and I know I had talked to Ed about this one. This is probably the hardest part of our jobs in development, is to deal with sometimes mistakes of staff and an email saying it appears, I don't believe is as official as what, as an actual determination. However, that being said, I do agree with what the applicant stated. I agree with all the research, and I appreciate what the staff put into this. I think it's important to note that, we do interpret the code in a consistent way, and that's why we made the determination that we did. It's important to note, and I understand what Sarah's points were, which are very valid, is that this affects 10 other lots in the subdivision. And we really do, and I'm directing staff now to relook at the language, because this affects other projects that currently are under our review. One specific one that Ed had alluded to. So thank you so much, and thanks for the applicant for bringing this to our attention and for coming today. But I just wanted to mention that.
Commissioner Whitmore.
And I kind of agree with Commissioner Baugh when we heard the amount of money that they have to pay just to appeal. I know they make money to keep their department going, but that's another issue. I would like to make a motion, an alternative motion, to grant the appeal of administrative determination AD-22-14.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Whitmore and a second by Commissioner Cruz. We have not gotten a public comment yet. I wasn't quite ready for that, but that's okay. I still have Commissioner Satcher on the board. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just say that I appreciate what the Court of Appeals did. I think that's the right decision. And we need to think about what the outcomes of each of our policies are. And so if we're setting up a situation where every farmer that digs a pond has to think about whether or not, his kids are going to be able to then sell the farm 20 years, 30 years later, that's not a good situation. And if we're giving the county rights over people's personal property just because they dug a ditch, that doesn't affect anyone else or what, I don't think that that's something we want to do. I think we need to be very clear about it. And I'll be in favor of us being clear that it shouldn't be counted against the farmer. And I'll just say another thing that, our regulations in general, they serve the purpose of in our community and incentivizing things that we want to see. And I don't believe that this is a time that we want to put more hoops in front of people trying to keep land as ag land. So I think that this is a time where if people want to do that and they want to keep their land under that category, just in general, not necessarily the specific parcel, we should be working with them with that goal in mind. And I think that serves the interest of our community and the interest of our nation to make things as simple as possible for people to either keep farming or even if they're just going to be able to own a small farm or ranchette. That's still that's a great American dream for people to have. And I don't want to put up extra hurdles with the county for them to accomplish to do that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. Then we'll go to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward to speak on this specific agenda item? Sir, please state your first, your last name, your county of residence.
Connor Burke.
And you'll have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Can I pass out a paper?
Yes, you may hand one to the clerk as well, please. And then if Rosina or somebody would hand that up to, there we go. Get that up to the dais, thank you.
Connor Burke, Development Manager, Neal Communities, Manatee County resident, and I have been sworn. About 3 weeks ago, we received a comment from county staff stating a similar issue for a 230-home subdivision that we're creating in Parrish, Florida, known as Gamble Creek, also known as Broadleaf. The comment is as follows. Staff has concerns that there's potential for a non-conforming lot being created on the R-Fonds property with the size of Pond 2 proposed. Per Section 413C3, no land below a shoreline or part of a wetland shall be considered part of a lot for the purpose of determining compliance with the required minimum lot area or size under this code. To summarize this, we want to put a stormwater pond on a piece of property, and as a result of putting the stormwater pond, a portion of it's considered below a shoreline, and that area is going to be deducted from our minimum lot area. I disagree, however, with this interpretation, and it's because of the definition of a shoreline. If you look at the definition of a shoreline, it's embodied by 5 different bodies of water: lakes, streams, rivers, oceans, and estuarine conditions. Estuary relating to an estuary or the wide part of a river where it meets the sea. A stormwater pond is not an estuary, it's not an ocean, it's not a river, it's not a stream. Now, I could see how one could consider it to be a lake. However, I'm going to give you one more definition, the definition of a pond. A pond is an area of water smaller than a lake, often artificially made. By definition, a pond is smaller than a lake, and it can't be a lake. I believe there's not clarity in this definition of a shoreline. I don't believe a stormwater pond or a burrow pit should be applied to it. And I ask that the definition of a shoreline please be looked at further. Additionally, a stormwater pond is a very specific use of a piece of property. That stormwater pond could later be filled in an apartment complex put on that same piece of property. I don't think that area should be deducted from the minimum lot area. I ask that this please be taken into consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward to speak on this specific agenda item? Okay, seeing no one, we're going to close public comment. Staff, do you have any closing comments?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Applicant rebuttal.
Oh, boy.
Yes, Ed Vogler for the applicant. We can never anticipate the action of the board, so I just need to make a couple of comments very briefly. One of the things that also occurred and is required, the county was asked for and issued an address to each of these lots, each of these parcels. And so the formal addressing routed to all the agencies, all the county departments and so forth. It looked routine. It looked routine until we got here. And so, of course, the county attorney has a tough job and very tough job. And she's right, though, and has to protect the county. Ordinances have to be strictly construed. And this goes to sort of Commissioner Satcher's comment as well, is largely. I'm sorry. That was. I know you're hungry.
So are we.
Anyway, largely, you know, we regulate land because we need to, because of public health, safety, and welfare. There are not those issues here. And in these rural lands, to have this dream home built on this lake, it's idyllic. And I'm telling you that there are 14 families that are asking you for this relief. And I think it would be different if the developer was asking for the relief and could have done something different. But this is not the developer. These are real people, almost all of which I've talked to, and an earful. And so we have to rectify this. And, you know, I volunteer a lot because I care about this. I mean, we can help with the definitions. I know that this came up in Panther Ridge. Did I say this earlier? It came up in Panther Ridge. In the early 90s, we were selling 5-acre platted lots that the Mott Foundation had all these old plats. They were selling 10s and 5s. And at that time, one of the 5-acre lots had a big wetland on it. So the county staff was saying, oh, it's not a buildable lot. And that's when we proffered the ordinance that became the 1-acre ordinance. So if you had a 5-acre lot in Panther Ridge and 4 acres were wetlands, you had a buildable lot. And that's where it came. And I was kind of shocked to see that it had changed over time. But nevertheless, I'm not going to belabor it anymore. You've heard it all. I hope you act favorably on this. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we have a motion on the floor. I only have one commissioner on the board for deliberation, and that's Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, I've just been waiting patiently. I actually tried to put myself on the board when this started. I didn't realize it was quasi-judicial. It doesn't say it. Just to make this motion to approve this. It's quasi, so I couldn't. But I just tried. I read this, and no offense to staff. I understand that's your job, but come on. I mean, it's a burrow pit. It's not a shoreline. And if you look at these lots, they average over 4 acres. upland, not even with, and even the smallest lots, almost 2 acres. I mean, we're begging people to build homes on lots this size, and we're gonna nitpick over some portion of it being under a lake. I mean, come on, we just cost them $5,000 and what looks like, based on his emails, over a year? A year during a peak home sale period to wait around for this? There's gotta be, we need to look at a different system for some of these appeals where, now, Mr. Vogel put together a very good letter explaining why this made no sense. There should have been a better system to come to us first and see if there was an immediate consensus before wasting a year, $5,000, and an entire morning of everyone's time for something that when I read it, I'm like, if this wasn't 7-0 or 6-1 or whatever the case, I was going to be shocked. So, I think we need to come up with a better system for some of these appeal processes, because this to me made no sense. And to the point of Neal Communities, we do need to look at that, because I think Commissioner Satcher made a very good point. If someone goes in and voluntarily puts in a pond because they just like the cosmetics of it, whatever, and then they divvy up their land to their kids, now their kids can't build homes on it because you built yourself a pond. That's not shoreline. That's not the intent of, I don't think, what the language was. We need to clean that up so we don't run into these situations in the future.
Thank you, sir. And no one's on the board, but I'll just say in closing that I agree the system is flawed. Staff did follow the system, but when the system is this flawed, I hope that staff would feel emboldened enough to bring that to the administration and point out flaws like that in the system so that they can be rectified by this board. Sooner than later. Yeah, sooner than later. Okay, so with no one else on the board, we're going to go ahead and move forward with the vote. Can we read the motion first, Madam Clerk? Would you mind going back and reading the motion, please? It's been a while.
A motion, pardon me, a motion was made by Commissioner Whitmore and seconded by Commissioner Baugh, granting the appeal of administrative determination AD-22-14 based on the staff report, evidence presented, comments made at the public hearing. The motion was to move adoption of Resolution R-22-138 to grant the appeal of administrative decision AD-22-14 and modification of administrative decision AD-22-14.
Thank you, ma'am. All in favor of the motion on the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Madam Clerk, the motion passes unanimously by a vote of 7-0. Commissioners, is there anything else for the day? All right, we're adjourned.